All right, we're back. We're back. Thank you, everybody, for joining us with the Greater Reset, Day 4. Take back our tech. If Mexico's there, we could kick it around a little bit, but I want to welcome the online audience. We've been pretty busy down here in Texas. Tech is a very important day. In fact, every single one of the days at the Greater Reset is important. There's 5 different topics, 5 different areas that we've chosen because we think these are critical areas in order to help us circumvent, jump out of, overcome this Great Reset agenda. We called it the Greater Reset because we got bigger plans in store. We're creating a free world for the future generations to come. And I'm honored for each and every one of you to be a part of it. And I'm honored to be doing it alongside really great people like Derek Rose and Ramiro and all the cool people joining them down in Mexico. How you doing, Derek?
I'm doing good, man. Everybody doing well? You guys, they're coming back from lunch slowly. You know how it is, John. It's a slow trickle back in after lunch. But we're excited. We're excited to be here. I was just explaining to somebody how important it is that we take this holistic approach, because some people, they get the food, maybe they get the spiritual, the health aspect. Not so many people fully understand. Whoa, sounds like we're getting some feedback. Fully understand the holistic nature and why it's important that we talk about tech, we talk about community, we talk about health, we talk about building new systems. Every single one of these pieces are important. So I hope that those tuning in at home and those who have paid to be here in Mexico and Texas take advantage of every single day. We are going to be releasing all the talks. I've started editing them last night. They will be released by next week. And we're releasing the full recordings on our Odyssey channel. So we know it's a lot of information, but please, seriously, take each day as an important one and go back and watch the talks. All of you who are taking notes, we love you. We can see you're taking this seriously, and we appreciate it. And the trick is, of course, after this, that we all go apply it to our lives, right? Not just talk about it and listen, but we actually apply it to our lives. So thank you guys for being here as we talk about technology.
Thanks, Derek. Yeah, and Derek's right. Derek pointed out earlier, Samuel Edward Konkin III, he is the guy that created this revolutionary strategy of agorism or agorism. He correctly said the consistent application of the philosophy of liberty is what creates the free society. So that's exactly what we're doing. We're trying to create freedom for each and every one of us. And the advice I'd like to give you guys is through self-awareness, through a self-assessment, identify areas in your life where you may need to improve your freedom game. So maybe you got all the food going, you got the Texas Ready Seed Bank, and you're growing the food, it's all going well, but you're all in Gmail, you don't have a Bitcoin wallet, you complain about Bitcoin, you try to poke holes in it, but all you got is Visa and MasterCard, right? Or maybe perhaps you feel isolated in your area, in your community, and you're looking to do the intentional community. Identify those weak areas and then start to take some notes and to take some action items. And I encourage people to set some goals too. Another great exercise is to set those goals. And then when you come back for the Greater Reset 5, which may be called manifestation, you have manifested your reality. You've created a more free life for yourself. All right. But as we've been saying today, technology is a huge piece of it. Owning your data, having control over how you interface with the internet, having control over your money. These are all key pieces for the liberation of humankind, which is what we're going for here. Pretty ambitious, but I think we could pull it off. And our next presenter, we're excited to have him here in Texas. He is the owner of a business, a company called Start9, and they help people to onboard into the decentralized technology space. Let's give it up for David Croissant, ladies and gentlemen, of Start9.
How's everybody doing? I know you just ate lunch. It's a little slow. I'm feeling a little slow. If we could get this slideshow up on there, and there it is. See, ask and you shall receive. I wanted to give a quick thank you to everybody behind this curtain right here, everybody in the kitchen. Let's give it up for these guys because they're sweating, they're stressing, and they're really putting on a really powerful professional event here. And I'm really impressed with the work that's gone into this and how it's going right now. Just a quick piece of errata. I am not the owner or CEO of Start9 Labs. I've been there for a couple of years, but the company's been around for 3 years. And I'm actually not going to talk too much about Start9 today, but I just wanted to make sure that was clear. So I'm going to talk today about responsibility, liberty, and technology. And just quickly who I am, my name is David Croissant. I've been working with open source technology for quite a while now, about 15 years. And currently I'm working with Start9 Labs to help people declare their digital interdependence. And I'm going to talk a little bit about what that means. And I'm going to sprinkle in a little bit of, we're in Texas, so I want to sprinkle in a little bit of founding fathers here. Be it remembered, however, that liberty must at all hazards be supported. We have a right to it derived from our maker. But if we had not, our fathers have earned and bought it for us at the expense of their ease, their estates, their pleasure, and their blood. So this is to say, freedom isn't free, right? Something in the people in this audience surely understand. Let me get who's familiar with these guys? Let me get a quick show of hands. Who uses any of these guys' services? My hand is up, you'll see. Almost everybody. There might be a few hands. Let's leave those hands up for a second. How many of you have grievances? Leave your hands up with any of these guys. I didn't see a hand go down. Let's leave them up. One last question. How many of you read the terms of service when you agreed to use these services? I see a few. That's impressive. I see 3, 4, 5, 6, maybe. That's a lot. The most I've ever seen in a room is 1. And that was Erin from Float. Some of you guys know her. So let's go on to the next slide here. There's only really one reason that we do this, right? And that's complacency. And I'm talking to myself here too, so don't feel offended. This is me, this is all of us. We're all the same at the end of the day. But the reason we do this is because these are seen as free, even though realistically we're not. These are not free services, right? Who's the product? We're the product, that's right. Safety, that was a big one in the last couple of years, huh? Lack of attention to the consequences of using these services. So what are we trading for these free services? We're trading data that can be used to understand our buying habits, our political affiliations potentially, our movements, geolocation, things of that nature. And most importantly, and what Start9's working on is that we're also surrendering to these companies and these institutions our digital property. So imagine you take a picture, and whether or not you believe property is real, if a picture that you take is belonging to anybody, it belongs to that person that creates it. And we're very quick to blast through these terms of service without reading them, give this property up to some third party, such as Google. And then every time we want to use that property or we want to share it out with our friends and family, we have to go and ask permission. We have to log in, right? Can I have my digital property? Can I access that? And can I share it to my friends and family? So I think we all understand the problem, and that's about as much time as I'm going to spend on the problem. I want to talk about solutions. But if you know neither the enemy nor yourself, you will succumb in every battle. So if your enemy knows more than you do about yourself, and they do in many cases, this information war is not going too well. I think we're finally waking up and we're figuring out the tools and how to use them, but it's not been going well for the past decade. So responsibility. How many people have heard this word broken down this way? A few. Okay. So if you think about it, we've got some first responders here, some firemen. They've got their gear. They keep it maintained and orderly. They're ready to go. They are sacrificing their time, their energy for a cause that they believe in and sacrifice to others. And this is what responsibility is all about, in my opinion. And it kind of starts with the care enough to act in the first place. And the important thing about having the care to act is that you start where you are with what you have, right? So if you're like me and you've been on a computer most of your life and you understand the tools, then maybe there's some more advanced things that you need to learn, and maybe it's time that you hand those tools off to other people and you help other people get further down the journey. If you look at a computer and you're like, I just want to shut the lid because it's just all spinny rainbows to me, right? Then you got to start where you are, and you got to understand, okay, what can I do with where I'm at to improve my situation? And so kind of two quick things that I'll recommend that folks do. One is to use an ad blocker. uBlock Origin is one, and I'll put all this stuff up at the end. And the other is to use a password manager. So those two things, an ad blocker is going to help preserve your time and attention. You're not going to get distracted by all this nonsense all over the screen, all these advertisements that are stealing your attention from you and your energy. And a password manager is going to be like, that's your safe. That's keeping your property, your passwords, your ability to log into things safe. And one other thing that's good to think about is if you're, a lot of us have been on the internet and we see an article, a video, something, and we look at it, we're like, wow, that's really powerful. And that's probably going to disappear in a week, right? Like we're starting to see stuff just fall off the internet as fast as it's coming up. If you have that thought and it's important content to you, save it, bring it down off the internet and put it on your computer so that you can share it with other people when it disappears, so that you can put it onto other websites if you have the ability, or if you have an account, a blog, a social media, put that content up and share it with other people. Liberty. So to me, liberty is the mastery of the self in order to serve others with that mastery. And a requirement of liberty is constant vigilance or discipline to that, because we know there's always someone looking to infringe on our rights and take what we have and steal our time and attention and use it for their own will. And the thing that binds all this together is love. And it's truly incredible to be in a room of this many people that I know love and care about each other, and that know so much about so many different disciplines. I'm learning things about, how to put some potatoes, water, and salt in a bucket of water. And suddenly my soil is actually going to grow food, which for the last couple of years, I've been watching it like, oh, come on. Like, okay, I got a couple carrots and that's exciting, but I'd like to eat for longer, off my garden. So it's really encouraging to be in a group like this and see all that. And I'm going to probably blast through some of these kind of quickly, but technology is just the science of craft. So any kind of tool, everything from a pencil to a supercomputer is technology. All tools are technology, and all technology is neutral until it's used with some intent, right? So you can write a book with a pencil, or you can stab it into someone's neck, and they're both there's some woes, some like, whoa, you'd use a pencil as a weapon? That's bizarre, right? That is bizarre, right? We would think of that as bizarre. That's not what that's for. But that doesn't mean that someone can't use it that way, and some people will think about using it that way for their own gain, unfortunately. Open source. How many people have heard the term open source or have any familiarity with it? Most of the room. That's impressive. Very cool. I just like to equate open source with recipes. So recipes are for food. Open source recipes are for code. So if you bake a cake, for example, and there's different, you write down the instructions, the ingredients, and how to prepare them, and then you can pass that around, and other people can change, make edits, add a little sugar, take away some sugar, add some salt, whatever, to their liking, and they can share that. And then some people might collate a bunch of those into a cookbook, and they might sell that as a business. Code's exactly the same way. Code's available to view, use, and modify if it's open source. And it's typically considered free as in freedom, but maybe not free as in free beer. As I said, the recipe cookbook example, you might make a business out of some open source code. And it's generally considered more secure because since the code is completely available, other developers can look at that code and they can read through it and understand and say, okay, there might be some problems here, you might want to address that. And so the community works together on these projects to help keep them secure and operating smoothly. So the current paradigm as far as computing and how the internet works, forgot I threw this one in here. We have against us timid men who prefer the calm of despotism to the tempestuous sea of liberty. And to that end, I want to talk about the client-server model. This is the way that the internet generally works today. And it's pretty simple. At the top there of that picture, you've got a server, and that's just a computer. All these devices are just computers. And a server is just where data is stored. So data lives on servers. Unfortunately, right now, most of the servers are owned by those big tech companies that we visited earlier. I like to call them GovCorp because they're kind of, intertwined between the government and corporations in Silicon Valley. They mostly own their servers, and then they are selling and weaponizing that data for their own gain. Whether that's with ill intent or whether they just are looking to make a buck. I'll leave that up to you. And so this is what we know as the cloud. So the cloud just means someone else's computer is the best way to think about that. So your and your family's data is being voluntarily handed over to these big tech oligarchs, essentially. And we have created this dynamic. We've created this hierarchy, as it were. And we call these in the industry trusted third parties. And Nick Szabo once said, trusted third parties are security holes. And it makes sense, right? You're giving all your power, all your property to these people, and then they are not selling it back to you. Well, they are selling it back to you in exchange for all of your data, your metadata, your an understanding of you and how you operate. So the next paradigm, probably a lot of people have seen this one too. Can I see a show of hands who's familiar with this graph? Okay, not as many people. Okay, I'll run through it quickly. So this was actually originally produced by AT&T. I think it was Bell Labs at the time. And the idea is that on the far left is what's known as a centralized model, and many of you have heard this terminology before, where you have sort of a single node or maybe just a few, and all the other nodes, and you can think of those as computers, as people. You could think of this as a city. There's lots of things that you could apply this to. They all have to interact through one or very few centralized nodes. When you start moving to the right of this diagram, you get into decentralized, which means there's many points of centralization, which is kind of like, you think of this as like cryptocurrencies and things like that are starting to get this direction. And on the far right is a distributed model or peer-to-peer. And the idea is that perhaps everyone in this room would be connected to everyone else in this room. And there's some inefficiencies in that. So it's kind of an idealistic sort of a model. But the idea is that we want to move from the left generally towards the right in order to have more connections with each other. That keeps us more stable, more integrated, and more interdependent. So that brings about this idea of self-hosting. I think that term's a little kind of redundant, but it's becoming popular. I like the term DIY hosting or do-it-yourself hosting. So this is, we still have a client-server model, so we don't have to change our devices or how things work. But instead of big tech owning a server, then you own your own server. And consequently, you own your digital property, your digital life, and all the metadata that's associated with it. You're not going to advertise to yourself. You're not going to censor yourself. You're not going to pull your content off of your server, unless you choose to. To each their own. The trade-off here is that data safety and resilience is your responsibility, right? So the biggest thing of this is keep a password safe. And if you have a password manager, it's just one password because you can store all your other passwords and they can be very long and complex and you don't have to commit them to memory. And minimal external trust is required though. So you get the benefits of being autonomous and resilient. Problem is that this is hard, right? Running a server for the past 20 years has been very possible, but it requires, guys like myself who look like this and they're hanging out in front of 20 terminals and they're changing config files and they're understanding how all these different programs interact and operate. And there's a lot of maintenance until now. But I want to do a quick flashback and explain why I think this is the case. So this is, I believe this is the ENIAC. This entire room in this picture is a computer. And his computer was pretty much just used for calculating ICBM routes so that they could calculate the arc of a missile. So the only people that were really allowed to use it was the military. It cost millions and millions of dollars. Those are $2021. And as you can see, there's several experts in there that were required for operation. You know they're experts because they have on ties and dresses and things of that nature. What do we have today? If you play your cards right, you might be able to get a free laptop, right? There's a lot of these hanging around now that are still very operational. They're exponentially more powerful, less expensive, and basic operation of these devices can be learned very quickly. In under an hour, you can teach someone. And there's actually a really cool experiment where some guys took and created a computer kiosk that was kind of weatherproof, and they just stuck it in the middle of this village in India that had no electricity and slapped a solar panel on it. And the villagers were kind of looking at this thing and they're like, it's kind of weird. This box, screen on it, they didn't really. And the adults kind of just walked by this thing and they were like, some silly Westerners just plopping this thing down in our village. But the kids started to go up and they started to touch the buttons and see what it did. And they started to figure it out and learn. And these kids, there'd be like 10, 20 of them gathered around this one computer and learning how to use it. And then they started to tell their parents, well, this thing actually is a really cool tool, and they started to teach their parents how to use it. So it's also really exciting to see the younger generations get their hands on things that maybe the older generations are ignoring. So I've been making this prediction for a little while, and I want to continue making it, so hopefully it comes true. But this picture here is a data center. This is you could consider this as what the internet kind of looks like in real life. This one I think belongs to Google, but I'm not sure. So these are highly centralized. They require tons and tons of power. They're actually built based on how much power they consume. So a lot of times building out power generation is a part of building out a data center. And again, several experts are required for their operation 24 hours a day because they have very, very high uptime. I think we're now moving into an era of personal servers. So same thing as we saw before, owner operated. These serve much smaller, whether individual, completely personal, or whether it's for a small community, a church, Freedom Cell, what have you. And these can be as cheap as nothing. You can find old computers, that need to be repurposed, and you can just put the correct software on them and turn them into a server. And again, basic operation can be learned in under an hour with some of the new software that's out today, including some of the stuff that Start9 works on. And the point I'm getting at here is that we can rebuild the internet into an owner-operated model, one that serves us, made by us. Complete sovereignty over your local network, which means everything that's in your home, your office, that's all segregated from the broader network. The internet just means interconnected networks, right? So each house is a network, and it can choose to contact other networks. Right now, we do all this through ISPs, Comcast, cable companies. There's pros and cons to that. Centralization has some efficiencies as well, but we don't have to use them if we don't want to. We can start connecting around them. And an example of this would be like a block level, meaning like a city block. If you're regional, then you might consider point-to-point or point-to-multi-point wireless technologies so that you can connect your community if you're spread in a more rural area. And when we build things in this way, then centralized infrastructure is required less and less. And what centralized infrastructure we do want to use, such as, for example, someone that's taken the time and effort to drag fiber optic cables under the ocean, we probably don't all want to do that, right? So we may depend on these companies, but they will become accountable to us because they'll be a lot closer in relationship because they'll understand, okay, these guys all have their own networks. They don't actually need a contact across the sea. But if they choose one, then we'll have to be competitive and be fair and provide a good service. And so the model that we have now, just to reiterate, GovCorp is essentially holding on to all of your data, all your digital property. And in the new model, you might consider Uncle Jim or Aunt Sarah, who might be your cool techie family member. This could be a brother, sister, friend, could be a family member, could be someone at your church and your community. Someone that understands how these things work. You might sponsor them to put together a server, to put together a chat server so that if Telegram one day decides that certain content is unacceptable, it doesn't matter because you can still talk to each other, right? Because the truth is, all might be free if they valued freedom and defended it as they ought. I want to thank you very much for your kind attention. And right on. Okay. Right. I want to throw up some resources here. You might want to just snap a picture or something. These are some very basic websites that might help you to understand some of the alternatives that we have already. Unfortunately, 30 minutes is just not enough to really dive into all these solutions. So I wanted to throw them up here, and I'm here all day today and tomorrow. I'm happy to answer all your questions, and I think I can take a couple right now as well.
Give it for David once again, ladies and gentlemen. Wait for the mic. And can you get us the text from this so we can share it in our Telegram channel?
Yeah.
So I'm curious, is the Raspberry Pi one of the optional measures for doing your own?
Yeah, of course. So a Raspberry Pi, for anyone that's not familiar, is like a deck of cards sized computer. It's very small. It has plenty enough power to run several different server-side applications. So you could run a chat server. You could run your own suite so that you don't have to use Google. You can store your photos, your files, all things like that of that nature. So yeah, a Raspberry Pi is a perfect way to get started. They're very inexpensive, especially if you find one used. And Start9 actually, that's the platform that we began on. So yeah, definitely. Oh, you have them?
What network? AT&T or what company for internet?
Yeah, so ISPs are they're kind of the final boss battle as far as the internet is concerned, right? So we can take our data back is the first thing that I want to recommend. But when it comes to ISPs and connectivity, you know, if you're continuing to use them, which is the easiest way to use the internet right now, then I would suggest that at least considering a VPN or Tor, I2P. There's other networks that you can use that at least shield your traffic from these companies and these institutions. And then what we're building towards and what we want to help people to build themselves, because we don't want to do it as a company. What we want to help people build is their own networks so that they can connect to each other, and so that they don't need these ISPs anymore.
Awesome. Okay. I believe there's a question in Mexico. If you will pull up Mexico, I think they have a question. Great job explaining some complex stuff really simply. So I really appreciate that.
I'm in the audience, John. Did we have a question over here? I thought I saw a hand go up. Did you have a question, sir? If you could come over here. I'm not on the stage, but I'm in the audience. Even though you can't see me, I'm out here, John. I'm getting this audience question. We have a young woman coming here to ask a question.
I wanted to ask him to show those resources again.
We'd like to see those resources again, David, if you don't mind.
Yeah, and I'll well, I don't think my presentation's up there anymore, but I will put them in the Telegram chat for folks to see.
Y'all mind throwing that presentation? Oh, did you close it? It's closed. We're going to put it in the Telegram channel for everybody because those were some awesome links there.
And everybody can find his links and website on his speaker page on our website as well. Any other questions here in Mexico? Yeah. All right. I got another question, John. 1 second. I'm running.
Dun, 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 dun,
All right.
Well, first, I was into networking before they had the internet, when they used to have, nets in buildings and stuff like that. So it's interesting to think about going back to that. But what is the protocol that you would use if you did something like within your house? And then the protocol, and then the protocol that you would use to connect to someone other's private house protocol.
Yeah, it's a great question. So every home, every service connection that has a router is creating a network. So that LAN network, everything within that is private until you choose to make a connection outbound or inbound. And so that network already is fairly private. So we use 2 networks for the server devices that we sell for our server operating system. And one is that local network. So anything that you want to do that you don't really have any need to send out of your home, so like your documents and things that you want to just keep local, those can all stay on that LAN network. And then for our remote connections, right now the network that we use is Tor, and we chose that because it does NAT hole punching. I'm going to get a little nerdy here. It does NAT hole punching, so you can get in and out of that without needing an IP address, and it essentially operates as a VPN. That's end-to-end encrypted. So we use that for remote connections currently, and we're going to be adding throughout the course of this year several other networking options, including a more traditional style of VPN for accessing your own devices on your home network, as well as considering options like I2P. And then when we start talking about routing amongst each other, then we're probably going to be more interested in mesh-style protocols like Reticulum, Yggdrasil, things of that nature. So there's a ton of open source projects that are working on this. It's a space that's really starting to build up some steam. So it's hard to say exactly what we will be using in the next 6 to 12 months because there's so many options and everything's changing so quickly.
I have a question. When we talk to people about Bitcoin and cryptocurrency, a lot of people say they'll just shut down the internet. So can you answer that? Can they shut down the internet? And if that is possible, which I think it's pretty impractical, but if that were to be possible, what can we do about it?
Yeah, so it's the same as saying, like, can they turn off the electrical grid? Like, sure, and it's going to be a lot easier to do in sections, right? It's going to be easier to attack an electrical substation and shut down some area of power, some region, than it is to shut down the entire globe's electricity, because some of that stuff is just, it's segregated and it operates in different ways. And the internet's very similar, right? So the short answer is, like, yeah, sure, maybe there's a way to turn off all connectivity around the globe. But in response to that, what do? Well, we start at home. Well, we have our data. Okay, so we don't have to be concerned that all of our data belongs to Google on some data center that we don't even know where it is. We don't even know what state it's in. We can actually know that it's there, and we can share it out amongst our friends. We can print documents and pictures, and we can get screens and show each other video content, things of that nature. So that's the first thing, is when you own all that stuff, you don't have to worry so much about external forces, right? Because you have that ability to respond, to have all your own stuff. And then furthermore, usually that question gets asked about things like Tor in particular, right? So can they take down Tor? Like, yeah, maybe, but they got to shut down all of Tor. And guess who else uses Tor? Spooks, government. These people need to hide too, and they need to hide in plain sight amongst us, right? So they actually use these networks as well. And let's say they turn Tor off, all right? Well, we got other options. We've got I2P, we've got IPFS we can use to address content and share out that way. So there's always going to be, it's like a Hydra. If they do cut a head off of one of these protocols or one of these networks, then we'll just form another network. And those networks can start at your home, they can start at your community, and maybe run an Ethernet cable to your neighbor's house. Now suddenly you two are talking, and they can run one to their neighbor's house. And now the three of you have a network. That's an internet. That's all that is.
And we'll go to another question here in Texas. And I can't overemphasize, folks, do not let fear of some unknown prevent you from taking action. Because what if they do this? What if they do that? What if they get me with this? What if they just act? And the more of us that act, it makes it more hard for them to actually do some of that stuff, right? We have a question here, Brad, if you'll run the mic.
So if you keep your own server in your house, what about like disaster recovery? When your house burns down, you're kind of screwed.
Yeah, that's a great question. So there's several options. It's the same thing as like, well, what if you keep a gold ingot in your house, right? Like, and someone can find your safe, and it's like, oh, well, they've got everything that was in that safe. It's a little bit similar, but the benefit in the digital world is that we can copy everything, right? So you can copy to a physical hard drive, and you can take that hard drive and you can bury it in the mountains if you want to. Slap some GPS on it and commit them to memory, whatever it is that you want to do. That's an option. Some networks that or some features that we're going to be building out on our side, on the systems that we build, will include the ability to make your backups to a remote system, say a friend. We like to call it like a backup buddy, right? So you might have someone that you trust, and even though that you trust them, you're giving them encrypted data that you have the password to, right? So you can make that backup to a friend. You can make that backup. You might even make that backup to one of these existing services because it's convenient, and you don't mind trusting them with that data because it's a backup. You have the original copy, and it's encrypted with your encryption, not theirs. So you can trust it and that they can't read it, right? So in fact, we like to say at Start9 that currently the only good use of some of these cloud services is encrypted backups, because you don't have to trust them, and because they have all this space that we can utilize until we make them obsolete, which is the end goal.
Okay, any other questions? I'm going to add something, if you don't mind. Give it up for David. I always am just, give it up for David. David, yeah. I have an immense appreciation for people that can take complex topics and make them very simple. And I think you did a really good job with your presentation doing that. You covered a lot of bases, and I hope it provides some hope and optimism for people. And I just want to echo, when it comes to Bitcoin, they'll just shut the internet down, yada, yada, yada. There's over like 35 or 40,000 different Bitcoin nodes. Is that accurate?
Well, we don't know how many Bitcoin nodes there are, because a lot of them are private and they're on the Tor network. And we actually offer the ability to run a Bitcoin node. The way our system works is you can run any kind of server-side software essentially with a one-click install, the way that you're used to on a smartphone with an app store. And so one of those things, if you want to run a Bitcoin node, you go to the store and you find Bitcoin, you click install, and it's going to download. And when you hit start, it's going to start syncing the blockchain, and you're going to have an entire copy of that public ledger that everybody is trusting to write their transactions to. And you can choose, hey, I don't want to broadcast, right, that I'm running a Bitcoin node. I'm going to keep this just a private node for myself, so that I can be my own bank, so that I can verify my transactions and those that I make with my friends and businesses I want to interact with. But we don't actually know exactly how many there are. There are tens of thousands, though, for sure.
So, like David, I believe, correctly pointed out, if they were to shut down the internet or the grid were to go down, it would be isolated. unless some aliens come in and drop an EMP on the entire globe, in which case you probably don't care how many Satoshis you have in your wallet. You're in a lot of trouble, as are we all. But if the grid were to go down in Texas, because Texas has this terrible, terrible ERCOT grid, or if they were to shut down the internet with this particular provider, because the Bitcoin blockchain is stored on 10, 20, 30, 50, 60, 70,000 different computers all across the world in just about every single country, the information that shows you own that Bitcoin will remain on all those other computers. And once the internet or the power comes back in your neck of the woods, you have access to that cryptocurrency Bitcoin once again. So we're trying to just eliminate all the freaking objections anybody might have in their head, so they go ahead and get onboarded and they're prepared for this CBDC nonsense that's coming down the pike. Yes, we have another question there.
I'd love to get your opinion on the safest way to do research online. I, have this weird thing called paranoia that somebody's watching me, and I would like to feel a little bit more secure when I'm doing my research on, whatever the hell's going on. Do you have a specific subset of tools that you use when you're doing research?
Yeah. So the sort of the go-to is the search engine, right? So if you want to enter a quick query and get the best that you can about that. And so we had this for a long time. We had basically Google. They were the first. I remember when they brought out the first search engine. It was like, whoa, this thing is incredible. Like we were before we were using these tools called web crawlers and things of that nature. And Google really revolutionized that. But now we're fortunate that there are lots of other search engines as well. And, pros and cons to each of them. There's a service that we recently added to our system called Searx. That's SEARX. And that's kind of a meta search engine. So it gives you a big list of all the search engines that it indexes or that it can potentially index. And you can go through and you can choose which ones. So you say, well, I don't really want Google for these searches. And I do want Quant or Brave Search, or there's so many of them right now I couldn't even tell you, but I would advise you to kind of try a few of them and just see which ones that you like, or use Searx where you can search a bunch of them at once. And then also research wise, that's a deep hole. You might want to go and hop onto, man, it's hard to even direct people, because when you start going into like alternative networks like Tor and I2P, you kind of have to find the places to find things in order to navigate those networks. And I think that's maybe why they call it like the dark web or the deep web, because it's just so vast and it's just not really mapped very well, right? So the unfortunate thing is, like, we're drowning in data, and what we're looking for is the signal, like you're saying, and it's really hard to find that sometimes. So I would encourage you to kind of just look around, keep asking people online. And join communities that kind of have gone further down that path and might have some suggestions for you. I hate to not leave you with anything more than that, but Searx is a good place to start because they have so many engines to choose from. Say it again. VPN. So I do. So there's several ways. A VPN just stands for a virtual private network, right? So this is mostly used for web browsing these days. So you might pay a company for access to their servers such that you can create an encrypted link between your device and their server before exiting into the broader internet where you're doing your search or you're visiting your website or whatever it is. That's the most commonly used. And you're sort of, you're trading some trust from your ISP, who previously could see all your traffic in the clear, to the VPN, who is seeing that traffic exit their servers. So there, I do use VPNs, and I like, there's several companies that are really doing it right, like Mullvad and iVPN, who they get independent audits of their servers. So at least there's some notion that they're running what they say they are. And they use good protocols like WireGuard. But there's also ways to use a VPN without a company. So for example, you could rent server space on some cloud hosted computer and form your own VPN to that computer, and they may know less about you. And all these services, VPNs, VPSs, which is virtual private server, I think, or basically cloud computer, someone else's computer. You can rent all of these things. You can pay all these subscriptions in Bitcoin, Monero, your choice. Some of them, like Molvad, will take cash in the mail. They said they've received change before. Someone mailed them change to pay. So there's anonymous and private ways to pay for them. You can get a new account every time you want to re-up. So there's all kinds of sort of little things that you can do. But you can also create an encrypted network to yourself. So I might want to create a VPN from here to my home, so that and then I'm not trusting anyone, right? Because I'm only encrypting the traffic between myself and myself, such that whatever network I'm on, such as the Wi-Fi here, can't read that traffic. So VPNs are a great tool as well. And eventually, I think that the way that the internet is moving, we're going to move into using shielded networks like VPNs as a default.
Right on. Give it up for David, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you so much. That was really good. All right. Great job. Great info. Okay, the Greater Reset 4 co-creation would not be possible, and we especially wouldn't be able to provide such a high-quality production and provide the online stream for free were it not for the support of these incredible sponsors.
Are you tired of the rat race? Do you feel like you're stuck in a rut with no way out? Feel like the game is rigged? Let's break that paradigm. It's time to take control of your future and break out of the rut. With AUTONOMY online training course, you can overcome the scarcity mindset, unlock your true potential, build executive and entrepreneurial skills, and learn how to be your own boss, all while growing your personal network. Take the next step in fortifying your intellectual self-defense and break free from the limitations of your current circumstances. AUTONOMY online training course is the key to unlocking success and creating a better future for yourself. It's a rite of passage for the digital age that you've earned. To learn more and get started today, visit getautonomy.info. Take charge of your life and start your own business today. Again, visit getautonomy.info. AUTONOMY online training course, your key to success. Central bank digital currencies are on the way. It's not a matter of if, but when. The only question that remains is, will you sit idly by while the CBDC system is erected all around you, or will you do everything in your power to opt out? I'm John Bush, and I've made it my life's work to help people just like you create real freedom in their lives. Now, generally, I'm an optimistic guy, but the CBDCs have me very concerned. But I got good news for you. February 6th through the 10th, I'm hosting the free CBDC Opt-Out Challenge. I'll be joined by special guests, Derek Bros, Jack Spirko, and others.
And get this, we just added a couple more speakers to the lineup. We're going to be joined by James Corbett of CorbettReport.com and Richard Grove of AUTONOMY.
We'll provide you with concrete action items and strategies so you can opt out. So head on over to cbdcoptout.com and sign up for free today. The more of us that participate, the more successful we'll be. So go to cbdcoptout.com and together we'll opt out of the CBDCs.
All right, welcome back, the Greater Reset 4 family. How are y'all feeling? All right, yeah, so I'm very excited to present our next speaker. This guy is an absolute legend. He's changed the world with Monero. He was the previous lead developer and maintainer of the Monero, the world's most privacy cryptocurrency, a household name for anyone who uses crypto. And especially, this is special because the lead developer, Fluffy Pony, he recently was, he had a legal, he had his legal suit settled. And he's now coming back to speak publicly for the first time since that. So I want to just give thanks that we have his work and we have him back in our digital community. And I want to welcome him back to the stage. Fluffy Pony, come on.
Thank you for having me.
Awesome, take it away.
Cool. Well, it's great to be back. Sadly, my legal stuff is still ongoing, so you know, can't take credit for that just yet. But you know, it's one of those things where when you're building interesting tech, then you attract interesting attention. So today I'm going to speak a little bit about Monero. The title of my talk is Monero, the world's least professional cryptocurrency, and why that's a good thing. And the reason I came up with this title is because I have often seen accusations leveraged against Monero, excuse me, that it's not professional enough. And initially, I didn't, quite understand what people were looking for, the people that were sort of throwing these accusations around. And then eventually I realized that they wanted to see structures that they were used to. They were used to banks, and they were used to financial projects like PayPal and Venmo and Cash App. And they wanted to see similar structures in crypto. And when they didn't, then it was weird to them, and they sort of like pushed back against that. And I really want to sort of hone in on what makes Monero special and why not being professional as a cryptocurrency is actually a good thing. So I do have some slides. I'm not sure if we're able to show them. Look at that. Amazing. So as mentioned earlier, my name is Ricardo Spagni. Many people know me as Fluffy Pony. I'm going to sort of give a little bit of an overview on Monero, a little bit of background from me. I'm part of the Monero core team, which is largely meaningless, and I'll explain why it's largely meaningless soon. I also co-founded Tari Labs and Yat, as well as My Monero, which is a Monero wallet. So today I'm going to give a brief primer on Monero. I'm also going to talk a little bit about what makes Monero interesting from a non-technical perspective, because of course Monero is very interesting from a technical perspective, but there's other special things about it. And then I'm going to talk a little bit about Monero's people and structure, and how Monero is decentralized by design, the challenges that creates, and why we continue to persist. So what Monero is and does, because there seems to be plenty of confusion about what Monero is and does. I think that's probably not a bad thing. I mean, it is a deeply technical project, and of course there's going to be a natural amount of confusion. When it comes to privacy enhancing projects, and for those who aren't aware, Monero is a privacy enhancing project or privacy enhancing technology. It's what we call a PET, which is not a dog. A pet is a privacy enhancing technology, hence the acronym. Monero's specific area of privacy that it focuses on is financial privacy. And there really are 5 aspects to cryptocurrency, to any privacy enhancing cryptocurrency. And I'm going to really drill down into them. And the first one is, at least from Monero's perspective, is unlinkability. So we want to hide where transactions are going to. The next aspect is untraceability. We want to hide where transactions are coming from, so who's making the payment. Then we want them to be cryptographically valueless, so we want to hide transaction amounts. Fourthly, we want to do a little bit of hiding against adversaries that are trying to find out the originating IP address. And then the last thing is optionality. So we want to maximize the privacy set. And that sort of goes into the next section because it's kind of non-technical, but I think it's an important part nonetheless. So let's start with the first one, unlinkability. So, I don't want to bore everyone with like deeply technical details, but the way that Monero works from an unlinkability perspective is that for outgoing transactions, you can't prove that they're sent to the same person. So this is an example Monero transaction. Obviously, it's totally made up. You've got transaction inputs and outputs. So inputs are like money that we're spending, and outputs are who it's going to. And you can see that these outputs look like they're going to these weird little things, which look maybe like Bitcoin addresses, but they're not really. If we go to the next slide, you'll notice that some of them are highlighted in red. And the reason for that is just to demonstrate that even though these addresses, which in Monero are actually just transaction output destinations, are going to the same address, there's no way to tell. So they're cryptographically unlinkable. There's no way to tell where a transaction is going to, who's being paid. It just goes to a random destination, even if multiple outputs in the same transaction are going to the same person. Now let's talk about cryptographically untraceable. So when it comes to untraceability, we want to not be able to figure out who's making the payment. So the way we do that in Monero is using something called ring signatures. So you can see here we're spending 1,000 Monero, which of course is a large amount of money, but clearly I'm living the dream by pretending that I can spend 1,000 Monero. And what we've done is we've gone and chosen random outputs on the blockchain. And this is important because these outputs are from very long ago, all the way up to more recent outputs. We've created this thing called a ring signature. The little one in red is the real signer. So that's the real output that we're spending. The rest are just part of the ring signature. And you'll notice that there's this little thing called a key image. And that key image is just a magic little cryptographic trick, which is used to uniquely identify the fact that we are spending the little red output, but it isn't something that can be reversed. So it's almost like a hash function that you can't reverse it and go figure it out. Now, ring signatures get a lot of flack, and that's for good reason, because actually, this is the hardest part. This is like the weakest part of Monero's privacy enhancement. And the reason for that is because we're trying to hide what we call the transaction graph. So the flow of transactions. And I'm sure if you've ever delved into like Bitcoin or Ethereum, you've maybe seen those little graphs that they do where they show the flow of stolen money, and they show that it went from this address to that address and then exploded out to 78 million other addresses, and then was consolidated in this 300th different address. And so this part is like genuinely hard because we're dealing with data that is inherently public. Now, because this data is on a blockchain and it's inherently public, that's not a bad thing. As I'm sure we're very well aware, and as other speakers have alluded to and spoken about, we live in a very adversarial environment on the internet, and there are plenty of organizations that are sniffing up all sorts of information. So the fact that this information lives on a blockchain and thousands of computers around the world agree on the information doesn't make it inherently bad. It just means that everyone has access to it instead of a handful of malicious organizations or devious organizations. Now, I'm not going to go into great detail here, but what I will point out is that one of the biggest issues with this is that people have a tendency to receive funds and then spend them pretty quickly, or pretty, maybe almost frequently. And so there were a bunch of weaknesses that were discovered way back in November 2014 around how we were choosing outputs. And so then we switched to this triangular distribution. Then we had this like recent output cut in. And then we created this thing called ring CT, which I'm going to talk about next. But it still isn't really enough. The challenge is that these ring signatures are relatively small. For a long time, they were under 10, and we allowed variable ring sizes, and then we sort of fixed them under 10. And now we've increased the ring size over time. But the reality is that on a per transaction basis, it's still relatively small. We need to have much larger ring sizes. That's challenging because larger ring sizes mean larger transaction sizes. And when I speak about larger transaction sizes, I mean like physically the number of bytes that it takes that get stored in the blockchain, that get broadcast out over the internet. There is an improvement, a cryptographic improvement called Triptych, which is coming, and that allows for a logarithmic increase in ring sizes. And so what that means is when you make the jump from say 10 to 20 from a ring size perspective, you're linearly increasing the size of the transaction. So it sort of goes up in this line. And logarithmic means that you can sort of go up in this sweeping upward sort of curve, which means we can have much larger ring sizes. So instead of, the sort of 16 or like sub 20 that we're currently at, we can start to play around with ring sizes that are like 128, 256 and larger. And that, of course, is fantastic for privacy. So this is, and I think it's important to be very specific about the fact that this is the weakest part of Monero's privacy. Let's hop on to the next one, though, which is that Monero is cryptographically valueless. And I alluded to this earlier when I spoke about ring CT. And so previously with Monero, we used to have to specify transaction amounts in a very visible way. And with the advent of ring CT many years ago, excuse me, this is a couple of years after Monero's launch in 2014, then we added this thing called ring CT, which is based on this thing called confidential transactions, which was initially invented for Bitcoin, but has still not been applied to Bitcoin. And ring CT is just using ring signatures applying confidential transactions to ring signatures, signing this difference between these things called commitments. And a commitment is, instead of including an actual value, you commit to a value. And then you do this clever little thing where you perform a bunch of arithmetic with commitments. You can't determine the actual value, but what you can determine is that no new amounts are being created out of thin air. And that's obviously critical because we don't want Monero being created out of thin air. It is, after all, a financial system. You'll have to excuse my coughing. So let's move on to the fourth aspect, and that is being passively hidden. Now, this is something that to date has not really formed a massive part of sort of chain analysis or blockchain analysis organizations, law enforcement, and so on. They haven't really focused on things like Sybil attacks and passive surveillance against transaction broadcasts to try and figure out the IP address. Because you can imagine if you know that there's a transaction that's happened and you can figure out the IP address of the node that broadcast it, well, that's bad. So you can see in this scenario that this is my node in green, and then the gray ones are other nodes on the network. And then these red nodes are logging nodes. And these are nodes that are logging all of the transactions that they get, exactly what time they get those transactions, down to the millisecond. Their times are synced, and they obviously store the IP address of the node that broadcasts it. So in this example, I'm sending a transaction, and the way I do that is by using something called flood fill. This is the way that transactions are broadcast on Monero. This is, or used to be broadcast on Monero. This is the way that transactions are broadcast on Bitcoin, Ethereum, and pretty much every other cryptocurrency out there. In fact, I think Monero stands almost unique in caring about this. And you can see that because I'm flood filling the network, I'm broadcasting to the nodes that I'm peered to, the nodes that I'm connected to. That little red logging node is one of the first nodes to receive my transaction. And as a result, can determine that this transaction likely came from my IP address, because that was the first transaction or the first node that it saw the transaction from. And that's obviously bad. So there's this thing called Dandelion++. Again, a technology originally invented for Bitcoin, like confidential transactions. We have a lot to thank Bitcoin for because it is the focal point, the center of attention when it comes to a lot of interesting research. Monero is picking a lot of that up, but it was originally this thing called BIP156, which is a Bitcoin improvement protocol. And then Dandelion++ was an improvement by the original authors. So the way it works is when I'm broadcasting a transaction, it's like a dandelion. There's a stem and a fluff phase. And so the stem phase is I broadcast it to one node. And then that node, and I pick the node at random from the nodes I'm connected to, that node will then broadcast it to the nodes it's connected to. And that's the fluff phase. And if you don't know what a dandelion is, it's a little plant where it's got like, little fluffy things on top and like a big round white ball. And you often see it in, very emotional movies where someone's holding the little dandelion, and they blow and all the little things go flying out into the universe. Now, as a result of the stem and fluff phase, no one can determine what happened in the stem phase. And so from the logging node's perspective, they think that this transaction was first seen from this little gray node over here. It wasn't from my node. And so as a result, we're able to defeat passive surveillance. And this is baked into every single Monero node. It's not the sort of thing that you can disable. Of course, you can still use Tor, you can still use I2P. But this is an important part of privacy that is largely ignored. Now, I want to talk about the fifth aspect, and that is the non-technical aspects to privacy enhancement. And this is super important because a lot of projects, and I've seen a lot of arguments on Twitter about which privacy coin is best. And they often focus on the technical. They focus on the hyper-specific, like on a per transaction basis, how private is it from a cryptographic perspective? They ignore things like robustness, and they certainly ignore things like these non-technical privacy elements. And so let's talk about one, and that's mandatory privacy. Now, what does it matter? Like if not everyone needs privacy, why does it need to be mandatory? Why can't it just be optional? So I want you to imagine a project where you have this blockchain and then you have this magical cloud of privacy that's attached. And maybe it's a layer 2, maybe it's magical privacy cloud on Lightning, maybe it's magical privacy cloud that's attached to the blockchain on a base layer. Doesn't matter. But imagine there's this magical cloud of privacy. Now let's imagine you have 100,000 users, and of those 100,000 users, 1,000 of them are using your magical cloud of privacy. Now, what we're effectively doing by having this magical cloud of optional privacy is we're restricting the anonymity set to those 1,000 users at best. And once you start adding in timing analysis and stuff like that, well, you're actually restricting it to a lot less than 1,000 users. You're probably restricting it to like 10. And as I'm sure you can imagine, if you're an attacker, all you need to do is go round up those 10 people and beat them until one of them admits to having done the bad transaction, or the transaction that you think is bad that nobody else does. And so, of course, mandatory privacy is this critical fifth element. But I want to talk about a sixth element that I didn't mention on my slide, and this is ideology. Now, this applies to Monero, and it applies to every other privacy project. Now, Monero contributors, and when I say contributors, I, of course, largely mean people who are developing code for Monero, but it could also mean people who are part of the larger ecosystem, people who are developing projects that are attached to the Monero project in some way, provide additional functionality, maybe it's a wallet, whatever it is. Now, when it comes to Monero contributors and the ideology that is espoused amongst Monero contributors know four things. We know that our code is responsible for securing people's money. I think that's fairly obvious. But we also know that our code may be required to protect someone's life savings. And so, you can be pragmatic and you can say to people, don't put all your money in Monero. It's a bad idea. Everything can collapse tomorrow. Just, be responsible. Not everyone's going to listen to that. And some people might have an obligation or a need or a requirement to put their entire life savings into something as privacy enhancing like Monero. And you can't judge that, and you can't begrudge that. And so our code needs to be robust enough to protect that. But the third thing is that our code might be needed or might need to keep an innocent person out of jail. And this, of course, becomes a bit of a sensitive topic, because there are a lot of people that believe that privacy is something that you don't really need. And I'm not going to delve into why privacy is important, because I think everyone listening to this talk probably believes that privacy is generally a good thing. What I will say is that privacy is something that you probably don't know you need until it's too late. And that is an unfortunate thing. And so we've seen in the past so often that people get caught up in dragnets. They get caught up in, sometimes very well-intentioned law enforcement agencies that are trying to go after legitimately bad people. And as a result, they end up sweeping a bunch of innocent people along with it. And it's kind of like those boats that go out to sea and they're fishing and they cast this net behind the boat and then they just pull up a bunch of fish. And along with that, they pull up dolphins and all sorts of other things. And sometimes you've got, innocent sea creatures, or not innocent, they're all innocent, I guess. But you've got sea creatures that are not intended as food that get caught up in this and end up dying. And that's kind of hectic when it's a human life that ends up in the balance, when it's somebody who ends up going to jail for something that they might not have done, and they are in some sort of pre-trial detention waiting for a judge to look at their case and say, oh, actually, you're innocent. The scars from that the mental and emotional toil that it takes is something that sometimes people don't ever get over. And so our code needs to be secure, private, and robust enough to keep an innocent person out of jail. But the fourth thing is that our code might be the difference between life or death. And this is something that I know keeps a lot of Monero contributors up at night. You know, they sit and they think carefully about things that they're submitting to the project. They sit and they think carefully about the ramifications and the repercussions of things that they're building out. And I've seen a lot of discussions where users want certain aspects of Monero's development to move faster, and contributors push back on it because they understand that secure, robust, privacy-enhancing code takes time. And so those four things are so critical. And I would argue that any privacy-enhancing project, whether it is a privacy-enhancing cryptocurrency, a privacy-enhancing messenger, any privacy-enhancing project that treats their work with less care, frankly, is not only irresponsible, but is indistinguishable from a scam. And that is something that I think is pretty critical. Now, I want to talk about Monero's people and structure because I think that, you know, there's often a confusion about how Monero started. You know, there's the meme that goes around, not meme, but, you know, there's sometimes the misattribution that goes around that I created Monero. I did not. Monero was launched by this guy called Thankful for Today in April 2014. And initially, it was just a fair launch of the CryptoNote reference implementation. Obviously, there are many years past that, and so it's significantly changed. But there's this interesting thing that happened, and that was Thankful for Today refused to listen to the community. The community had some ideas about certain things that they wanted done. He had other ideas about things that he wanted done. When he refused to listen to the community, then he was promptly ejected. And so 7 members of the core team, myself included, forked the project. So we forked the actual code. The Monero blockchain wasn't forked. That continued. And there were these 2 implementations. There was BitMonero, which was created and launched by Thankful for Today. And then there was Monero, which was our little fork of the code. And these 2 implementations ran in parallel for about a year before BitMonero stopped being able to sync up with the blockchain. And today, our role as the core team is just stewardship. So control certain things that cannot be decentralized or distributed, things like the GitHub repository, things like the domains. There's no way to decentralize these things, or at least not yet. I mean, of course, you know, who knows what the future holds. But we are stewards, and our position is relative. If Thankful for Today was ousted because he didn't listen to the community, well, we can be ousted too. So let's talk about some of the other aspects or other people in the Monero community. We have contributors to Monero; those are developers. We have the Monero community that work on related projects. They operate things like the social media channels, you know, whether it's Telegram or IRC or whatever. They also focus on things like user assistance. So we have a fantastic Stack Exchange for Monero where people can ask pretty deep questions. We also have, of course, the Monero subreddit where a lot of people go and get help. And then things like the Telegram group and, you know, so on and so forth. Workgroup operators and participants. So we have these self-assembling work groups. So as an example of that, we have the vulnerability response work group, which reacts to vulnerabilities that are found in Monero software. We have meetup work groups all over the world. Those are self-assembling. They go and figure out like, oh, hey, wouldn't it be cool if there was a meetup in this particular area or city? And they're entirely independent and self-assembling. The malware response work group focuses on helping organizations and people who are affected by Monero mining malware, helping them to figure out how to remove it from their computers, and how to, you know, contact the mining pool operator, and so on. But now, of course, you know, as you can imagine, oh, and then I nearly forgot the Monero Research Lab, which is another self-assembling work group, and that is a group of cryptographers and academics that focus on research around Monero. Now, as you can imagine, this is a group of people. Now, how do you decentralize people? I mean, decentralizing code is one thing because you've got Git and, GitHub, GitLab, all these different places you can store Git repositories. But how do you decentralize people? So you've got this big group of people in various little clusters. And this leads to two challenges. There's the challenge of personalities, and there is the challenge of paying the bills. So the challenge of personalities, let's start with that one. The challenge of personalities is one where you have to work with people who are unpaid, and if you don't like them, well, you can't just assassinate them with someone you hired on a darknet market. You actually have to deal with them. And the way that we try and do it within the Monero community is we encourage mutual respect. So, it doesn't always work, but at least it's encouraged. We try and do nearly nothing in isolation, so that, as to the extent that it's possible, as many people are involved in decision making and in building things, whatever they are, as can be. We openly discuss the problem child. So where somebody is being a bit of a problem child, then you'll often notice it gets discussed in very open forums, big open discussions on Reddit, on the Monero Meta GitHub, and that sort of thing. We encourage those that are unsatisfied with the project to kindly fork off. And, I say that as a pun, but what I mean by that is if they don't like the way Monero works, they can fork the code, they can fork the project, they can build whatever they want. There have been attempts at doing this in the past. They've not survived because at the end of the day, the Monero community, whilst not homogenized over much, we tend to agree that Monero has a fairly, unified path in the future, and that is to enhance privacy. And then the last thing is don't limit platforms. So, people can and have set up uncensored subreddits, multiple Telegram groups and so on. And we are happy as a community, and I don't mean like we as in me or as in the contributors or as in the core team, but we as a community are happy for people to talk about things on whatever platform they feel most comfortable. Then there's the challenge of paying the bills. So, most of us are not crypto rich driving Lambos. And so how does somebody who wants to contribute to Monero pay the bills? So there's two real ways. There's donations and crowdfunding, and there's corporate sponsors. So under donations and crowdfunding, what's unique about Monero is we have something called the CCS, which is a community crowdfunding system. And basically the way it works is anyone can pitch up, they can post an idea on the CCS, they can say how long it's going to take them, how they're going to accomplish this feature, what it's going to cost, and then they can raise Monero from the community, and the Monero gets paid out once they hit milestones. So they don't just get it up front. Maybe they say this is a feature that I'm going to build, and it's going to take me 2 months, and I want to get paid half at month 1 once I've developed a certain part of it, and half at the end of month 2 once I've developed the other half. And so if they disappear halfway through, somebody can pitch up and continue working on it and get paid the other half, which has happened in the past. And then we have corporate sponsors, which are obviously largely like Monero adjacent organizations that help cover things like the server or the servers rather that host the Monero website and so on. And so the company I co-founded, Tari Labs, pays for the CDN as an example, which is used to distribute the Monero software. And the CDN we use is expensive, but very cool because they have a bunch of servers behind China's Great Firewall. And so that means that even in places like China, where if they might choose to block Monero at the Great Firewall level, the CDN will still serve Monero software internally within China, which is kind of special and unique. Now, why do we bother with decentralization? As opposed to just like moving fast and breaking things and just being like having a Monero foundation or having, a core group of like 20 Monero developers that get paid a salary from, I don't know, like Monero mining rewards or something. And that's not to say that, stuff like that is a bad model, but the basic goals of decentralization as it applies to Monero is that nobody should ever be able to control the network. And that means that it needs to be as decentralized as possible. Nobody should ever be able to easily introduce a backdoor. That doesn't mean they can't try, but it should be caught in the path of, merging and deploying things. No single person should mean the life or death of the project. And at the end of the day, users depend on us getting this right. Now, when I say no single person should mean the life or death of the project, I mean that quite literally. I'm the former lead maintainer of Monero. I'm on the Monero core team. I no longer have write access to the Monero GitHub repository. And that's very important because it means that I can be hit by a bus tomorrow and I'm entirely irrelevant to the project. If I want to contribute and I want to add a feature to Monero, I need to pitch up, have a discussion, write the code and submit it just like everyone else. I don't have any special privilege. I just have the privilege of history. And the last aspect is that the project should be respected despite the people involved. And sometimes I've seen projects take both criticism and compliment as a result of Euro worship, as a result of prickly personalities. Maybe like the person that is spearheading it, or like the leader of the project or the founder or whatever, is a very likable person, very affable, and so as a result, or maybe he's very nerdy, he like wears glasses and plays chess, or I don't know, plays Counter-Strike or something, and defrauds people for billions of dollars, and as a result, there's all of this respect and trust that is heaped on them, which is ridiculous. At the same time, you get the opposite, where somebody is just like not that likable as a person. And so the fact that they write good code, or the fact that they are incredibly gifted, is irrelevant, because like they need to be likable. They need to either be a classic closeted nerd sitting in their mom's basement, or they need to be just like very likable. And there's no in between. And I think that both of those extremes are invalid. I think that what's really important is that the project should stand on its own, and the project should garner respect because of what it accomplishes and what it does, not because of people involved, but despite the people involved. So I take it as a mark of great accord and great privilege and great respect when people complain about me. Fantastic. Let them complain about me and let them like Monero. Let them complain about other Monero contributors, but like Monero nonetheless. Or hate Monero. That's their loss. So ungovernance best practices. How do you ungovern a project? How do you keep a project decentralized despite not having central governance structures? And so there are a couple of principles, and this is really just stuff that I've learned over the years with Monero and others, other open source projects. The first is educate. Don't keep knowledge to yourself. You're not you're not Harry Potter. You're not the wizard that knows things. Welcome newcomers and make them useful. Not make them feel useful, make them useful. And that means if they do something small, of course, praise them, but give them the guidance and direction so that they can do bigger things. Make sure other people know how to do your job. When I started stepping back, and this is linked to the next one, which is hand over responsibilities to others. When I started stepping back as lead maintainer and handing those responsibilities over to others, I had to make sure people knew how to do my job. I had to make sure people knew how to build and deploy a Monero release. They could not rely on me. Otherwise, I'd just be the bus factor. Sometimes you need to do less to give others a chance. There was a period of time in Monero's early history where I was taking on tons of responsibilities because nobody else was able to or available to. And as a result, it ended up with like the buck stopping quite often. And so I needed to actually stop being a yes man and hand things off to other people and just be like, hey, you can do this, right? And give them a chance, and then help them when they make mistakes, if they make mistakes. The next is just don't ever think you're irreplaceable. I see a lot of people that are involved in open source projects holding on. They're just like gripping this thing with their talons because this is their little area that they exercise a little bit of power, and they just they'll do everything to retain that power, and it ends up being a total mess. It ends up driving contributors away. It ends up driving the community away. You're not irreplaceable. And the last thing is always highlight the efforts of others. And that's sort of the last point that I'll really make in this talk, and that is Monero would not be where it is today were it not for the contributions of literally thousands of people, if not tens of thousands of people. My role in Monero's history often gets a lot of credit, a lot of sort of public credit, and I think that that's a little bit sad because there are so many people who have just been an integral part of Monero's early history, and people who are no longer with us. They are contributors to Monero who've passed away. They are, but are, you know, structurally important to like the code that we're running all over the world in Monero nodes. And there are people who have done way more than I've ever done with regards to Monero's code base, Monero's community, helping new users. I already can't take much credit. And whilst I, you know, deeply appreciate being a part of Monero's history, I want to just give a massive shout out to all of the people who've been a part of Monero's history, all of the people who've been around for a while, and the newcomers who pitch up and see things that they can do to help Monero. You know, everyone who's been involved in the Monero Research Lab, everyone who's been involved in the Monero Ecosystem Project, the Monero Outreach Project, anyone who's built anything that has touched Monero in some way, all of you are appreciated. You know, I think we need to continue to just give credit where credit is due, and that is to all of the people that have just made Monero what it is. And with that, I will thank everyone for listening to my long and rambly speech about why Monero is the world's least professional cryptocurrency, why that's important. If you do have any questions, I believe we're going to take some questions now. But beyond that, getmonero.org is the Monero website. There's, of course, a wealth of information there. Beyond that, the Monero Stack Exchange, the Monero subreddit, and you'll notice on the Monero website, there's links to a ton of community resources where you can get answers to all your questions.
Awesome. Give it up for Ricardo. Yeah, I first of all, amazing presentation. We will open it up to questions in a second, but I just want to take a second to recognize how much overlap there is, whether you're building a privacy project that supports free currency for millions of people, or you're building an autonomous community, right? You need to know how to work with your community. You need to delegate and decentralize the processes. And I just want to say too, even though I just barely dipped my toes in the Monero community, everyone on their IRC chat, which is how I got in touch with Fluffy Pony here, they were so nice, so respectable, and it really shows that their vision and philosophy all goes from the top all the way to the bottom down. Do we have any questions looks like we don't have time for questions. Ricardo, thanks so much again.
Thank you for having me.
Oh my, I think we had a camera difficulty. All right, so our next segment is a very special one. This is a decentralized program we do as part of the Greater Reset. One of the things we realized, even though we're in person in two places, in Texaco, hey, Texas and Mexico, with hundreds and hundreds of people, we still felt that the people watching at home needed a place to get together and build those connections. So last year, for TGR3, we started this project called the Activation Hubs, calling upon you, wherever you are, to create a container to come and watch the Greater Reset, but not necessarily be limited to that. Bring in the local specialists in your community, anyone who has skills and knowledge to share, and create an event with them. Get to know your fellow producers in your area, trade, connect. And so part of that has been having watch parties, and I'm really excited to be bringing on a previous TGR watch party and now forming their own intentional community. They flew all the way over here from Sweden and then drove down to get here to Morelia. Could I bring up on stage Marcella and Milan from Mycelium Huset? Come on up. Give them a big round.
Okay, so, oh my God. Hi, everybody. Yeah, super nervous to be here, but thanks, Ramiro, for believing in us, in our, oh, here, to the light. Thank you for, well, for coming here. for allowing us to come here once again this year on the Tech Day of the Activation Hub. Tech is part of our lives. I know that our approach is a bit special, but nevertheless, we have our voice. This is a safe place to talk, so here we are. We are the Mycelium Hub. We are located in West Central Sweden in a beautiful and magnetic forest. We are very happy to come here all the way from Mexico and to meet you all in person and to share what we have been already co-creating. As an activation hub, we were very active in our local region. We grew our network, and we feel that we created more opportunities for us to live a more and more sovereign lifestyle. Also, we hosted a lot of visitors from around the world, and slowly but surely, like the mushrooms, our community started growing, and today some of those first spores are there here with us in Morelia. They came from many places. So thank you very much for making the decision to come, for being part of our mycelium and our pop-up mycelium in Acapulco for the next month, and also for joining us here in Morelia. It was a ride. For our talk today, we want to give continuation from where we left last year, and hoping in this brief time we convene our ideas and inspire you all. I will let Milan to guide you through our vision and our work. And if you have questions, please contact us to info@myceliumhub.org. Thank you very much. Gracias.
Thanks for the wonderful introduction, Marta, and for keeping the conversation with Ramiro going and bringing us to this moment. So super grateful. Thank you. Last year, we introduced our Activation Hub with its focus on technology, our use of a low EMF network, and our intention to set up a software stack of free and open source software to run our project and make it available to others. Now, I want to share where our journey has taken us and what that means for us going forward. I'll introduce the impact of operations on our development efforts and the discovery of an underlying theme that we now need to address, without which we won't be able to use any technology that we introduce properly. I'll talk about how this led to a focus on personal growth in the form of personal organization as the foundation for group organization and beyond. I'll talk a little bit about how we will use this insight to also create value and build our global network to support our operations, bring in funding, and power our development efforts moving forward. Let's begin with operations. That's the nuts and bolts that every community needs to address, right? Okay, is this better? Great. So operations, the operations of our property in Sweden. We got a few pics there for the background. You'll see it come up in a minute. That includes running the household, doing the maintenance in summer and winter. It gets up to -20 degrees, so a few things break and need to be fixed. We've had a few frozen pipes and things like that. There's also administration. There's maintaining threads of conversation with various incoming people and the paperwork and bureaucracy involved in running our business. That's part of Mycelium Hub. Yeah, there it is. So you've got a few pictures and you'll get an impression of the property there. Thank you. So this operation stuff really consumed our time and energy, and it left little focus for such development efforts like documenting, configuring, deploying, implementing, supporting, migrating, and upgrading the software stack, and then more documentation still. And let's talk about the software stack gap, because we discovered something. We had that focus in early 2022 to create a software stack to run our project and to share with others. And while we made lots of progress with the software stack and documenting our organizational patterns, these things are not our main focus now. As we progressed, we encountered some challenges and adapted our strategy. We learned about some foundations that need to be in place before we can make effective use of technology as individuals, as groups, and as a network. To be clear, even while we were working on the software stack, we had conventional closed source software that is very easy to use that we were using to document and manage our project. But people joined on site and they didn't make use of these existing tools. Why is that? So in answering that question, it led us to the rejection of and the need for structure. Right? So when inviting new on-site contributors to join us on the project again and again, we would all feel that we're aligned and it's going to be great. But over time, there was an underlying lack of coherence around the idea of organization. So that was the case even when we shared the agreements of the house in advance and people nodded them off. Yeah, sounds great. We'll do that, right? We're going to do this moving forward. But then people would show up to the project without a clear idea of which roles they would fill and often struggle to see the point of basic organizational habits like check-ins for coordination, right? So no software tool would really solve that. What to do? So that led us to the importance of personal organization and group organization and to look at how they relate to each other, right? And at this point, let me just define personal organization. So personal organization is part of a reflection and personal growth process. It's thinking about what's important to me as an individual, getting clear on the areas of life that I care about, that I have goals and visions for, and that I want to be spending time on, right? And personal organization is the structure that results from that reflection and personal growth process. Personal organization is how I track and evolve that. So before we get into organization and technology as a group, we need to have clear processes in person and online to help ourselves and others create definition of our personal organization, our life structure, if you will, right? When we define ourselves in clear terms, we can then easily share and overlay with others. We can see as a group, here's where we have gaps. Here's where we have areas in common. Here's where we can create agreements. We need that definition first. From there, we can create agreements, which we discuss point by point and return to when there is a tension or a disconnect. This is not a simple thing. It's a matter of carefully discussing and reviewing them. And we want to create tools and workshops and templates around this. Collections of agreements for different types of situations, right? You'll need different agreements for online collaboration, for discussing politically explosive topics, or for solving the operations issues in a community. So in summary, we're looking for ways to create definition, to assess alignment, and create agreement. Then we can move on to organizational concepts like roles and responsibilities. And technology follows on from there. Only when those things are in place can technology really support us. So this is where the evolutionary purpose of Mycelium Hub that we've distilled this year fits in. To break down and define the main aspects of sovereign living and structure them into functional patterns at the personal, group, and network level. As far as technology goes, the development is driven by this work, meaning that we use tools that work now to help us define personal and group organization structures, and then move into better, meaning open source, decentralized tools from there. So for us in the medium term, other advantages over Notion, as soon as any type fulfills our requirements. Thank you. So what are we doing with this work? Where are we going? We're going to focus on applying this to building the network, our mycelium, right? So we want to use personal and group organization processes to optimize our existing global network, to create opportunities and new ventures. We need this to create the income streams that will fund operations. And as we know, we can't progress without that. Toward this, we're setting up a directory of resources for members, organizing pop-up mycelium hubs, such as the one we already have currently in Acapulco until the end of February. If you're curious and you happen to be in Acapulco, we'll be there focusing on personal growth and personal organization and creating opportunities and functional patterns together. At the Mycelium Hub Acapulco, we'll also be working on an ongoing survey to find out who the sovereign individuals and exit and build people are. That's you guys. So what do you aspire to? What are your obstacles toward that? And what would you find helpful? Learning more about our community will help us focus on where we can add value moving forward. So thanks for taking the time to listen to our Activation Hub Progress Report. I hope it's become clearer to you what some of the obstacles are to making use of technology on a personal and a group level. And I trust I've conveyed the importance of creating functional patterns to have thriving and lasting projects and communities. If you'd like to work with us directly on applying this thinking to create solutions and add value, please reach out by email, info@myceliumhub.org. We can host whole teams on site in the Swedish forest as well. Ramiro, we hope to have you there this year. So look up our pop-up hub in Acapulco as well, or talk to us here in person. And you can find us on the Freedom Cells website under Värmland, Sweden. Thank you all very much.
Give it up for Mycelium Huset from Sweden. All right. Need the next segment?
Ramiro's doing such a great job hosting. Doesn't he look nice? He's been preparing to share some awesome information with you guys all day. So he's going to go get ready to do that. Thank you for that, brother. And yeah, give it up one more time. Coming all the way from Sweden. Like, this is a real worldwide movement. When we say that, we're not lying. I mentioned yesterday, and maybe Ramiro can give us an update during his talk. Last time we checked, there was 22 countries who've tuned into this event from around the world. And I know if we do a count of the people who are coming from all over here, I've heard Denmark, Germany, Belgium, Canada, the US, Mexico. What else we got here? Anybody else? UK? Holland? Costa Rica, Australia, Brazil, Austria. Yes, awesome. That's great. Okay, guys, well, that's what I hope all of you who are at home can really see, that we are trying to connect with you. It's not just about coming to Mexico, coming to Texas. As the Mycelium Hub did, they started hosting events, streaming this, and kind of taking inspiration and then building from there. That's what you can do, right? So let's come together. Tomorrow, though, things wrap up, and we don't want it to be like, oh, there goes the activation, there goes the excitement. We want you to go home and implement these ideas, and then come back next year when we have the Greater Reset 5, which is called, oh wait, I won't say it yet, but we already know where we're headed next. We're on a trajectory. We started with activation, expansion, integration, co-creation. Where do we go next? We'll let you guys know soon. But we would love for you to come back and show us what you've done. That's the whole goal. Don't just keep coming back to this event year after year, but not changing your life. Because if you do, I would wager you're not really getting it. So please come back and share with us the changes and the things you've been through. But before we get to Ramiro to close out the evening, we got a special panel we put together. Let's go ahead and get John back on the screen. We got John. What's up, John?
Hey, life is good. That was a great talk. Also excited to hear from Fluffy Pony. I did want to take a second to drop in a little sponsorship spot. Exit and build provisions. This is the preparedness pail. It's really designed for folks that are low on time, busy professionals, because at the end of the day, we just took Mylar bags and an oxygen absorber, and got some organic non-GMO food. Really, anyone can do this, and we learned how to do it on the internet, but we wanted to take the work out of it to make it easy for those folks that are very short on time. There is 6 different food items. It's a total of 14. It's a nice little workout too. There's a total of 14 pounds of food in here, and we're hoping to help people in shoring up their food reserves, because who knows what's going down. And at the end of the day, with all the inflation, you could buy one of these, crack into it in a year or two, and chances are you'll have made a pretty sound investment. So if you want to check out this Exit and Build Provisions pail, one of our new companies here in Bastrop, Texas, you can go to exitandbuildprovisions.com, exitandbuildprovisions.com. And again, we're unique because it's not garbage like the other food preparedness pails. It's all organic, non-GMO. That's exitandbuildprovisions.com.
Very cool. And I would just want to say this. John was probably the most inspired by the phrase exit and build, which comes from my book, How to Opt Out of the Technocratic State, which I will be signing books again this evening, because he created a whole summit around Exit and Build Land Summit, Exit and Build Provisions. John gets it. You guys get it as well. And we're thankful you get it. We're exiting and building. We're not wasting our time waiting for politicians to come save us. We're thinking that violence is the answer, or choosing apathy. We're choosing to be proactive and forward thinking for the coming generations. And that's why we're thankful you guys are here. So I wanted to just take some time to do a little bit of a roundtable. John and I are going to host this. He's got 2 speakers over there, Glenn and David, which we've heard from today. And we're going to bring Parasite from DarkFi back with us. Could we go ahead and get Parasite and everybody back up here? And the title of this panel is simply, can digital technology really lead to privacy and liberty, right? Maybe some of you guys have been thinking this as you've been hearing these different projects. You're like, okay, that sounds great, but it's still on the internet, right? It's still, somebody's going to be able to intercept that signal somewhere, right? There's a lot of confusion and maybe misunderstanding and maybe even some naivete. Maybe some of us are naive in some ways in thinking digital technology can save us or help us. But I want to see if we can answer that question, or at least get some interesting thoughts out with this panel. So maybe we could just start there, John, and see where that leads with that general question of the panel, and just pose that to our panelists. Can digital technology, Glenn works on privacy tools, David's working with laptops and privacy, securing people in that way. Parasite and the DarkFi team are really trying to create anonymous infrastructure. Let's start with that. I'll go to Parasite first. Can these digital tools truly lead to privacy and liberty, or more specifically, can they actually protect our privacy and our liberty?
Okay. Yeah, I actually really think so, because like when we use these privacy tools, it allows us to build, to make counter economics, so we can build our own markets, free markets, which is something physical. So I think using this technology also will help us in away from keyboard as well.
Okay. Yeah, thank you. I'd like the mention of counter economics for sure.
Well, I think definitely we need to take the effort to get private, and getting private is definitely a step to getting free. Like I said, I mean, privacy and freedom are very much connected, and a lot of people that are in the freedom community talk freedom, but they don't talk privacy, and I think we need to talk about both. That being said, I mean, you can go so far down the rabbit hole with this that you can just live your life. Just all I want to do is get private. I mean, there's a balance that you have to find, and that's where, you know, I think the further you go down this, the more comfortable you get with getting private and using the tools that you can get private. And so it's not like you jump in and you just go all the way in. I think just do what you can, take a step, take a step, take a step. And because if you go too far into this, it's going to get overwhelming very quickly. I mean, there is a lot to know. So just don't worry about the whole diving deep into this. Do what you can now, take another step, take another step, take another step.
How about you, David? Yeah, I really like 2 concepts here when it comes to privacy. One, this idea, this metaphor of privacy sort of begins at the front door of your home, right, in the physical space. So anything that you would do in your home is your private business, you and your family, and there's no reason for anyone else to know what's happening inside that home. Same thing with your home network. So anything that you want to keep private can stay within your home network, and that is actually pretty easy to keep secure as long as you're not broadcasting it out across the internet, then you can keep that private. And the other idea that I really like is privacy by default, right? So instead of by default, all your metadata being shared, all of your private information being shared when you access a website or make a search or whatever, why not start using tools that actually respect that privacy by default? And then optionally, if you wanted to share data, say for example, say you use fitness tracking with a smartwatch or something like that. If you wanted to optionally share anonymized health data that might be useful to researchers, then you should be able to optionally provide that anonymized data. And realistically, you should even be paid for that. You should be given micropayments for the exchange of that valuable research data. And these are things that we think about a lot, and that are coming sort of a little bit further down the line, but they're not as far away as we may think.
Yeah, I got a question for Paris D. Great answers, by the way. It's Paris D, right? Paris D.
Anything's fine.
Anything's fine. Just a humble programmer. What do you think about Ethereum? What are your thoughts on Ethereum, the project and the blockchain?
Just in general?
In general, yes. Well, when it comes to the privacy and counter economics.
Yeah, I have different concerns and different good things. The way it's moving, just feels like it's becoming something state-induced, and there's a lot of surveillance going on. So I notice many projects are building these new things, and they're saying, oh yeah, we're going to scale using zero-knowledge proofs and various things. But there's also a fake narrative of promising fake security and privacy. But it's important to note that Ethereum is not doing anything actually to remain private. And on the side, we have these layer 2s, which are like Aztec Network and Starkware, which do give some kind of protection. But again, settling it back on the base layer, you lose all of your anonymity. So I don't think it's a good long-term solution.
Okay. Does anybody want to add anything else on that?
Yeah, I mean, I would agree with that. Ethereum's a really cool playground. They're coming up with some really cool ideas and working with some cool technologies that can be used elsewhere. I don't personally see it as money so much, and I definitely don't see it as a place to go to use money privately or to do smart contracting in a private way necessarily. So yeah, I would agree. And to see the links, the partnerships that are being made with some Ethereum adjacent institutions with big banks, JP Morgan,
World Economic
like
Forum.
this. Yeah, it's
there's even ties with the WEF as well.
Yep.
Yeah, so I steer clear personally, and but like I said, they are doing some cool experimentation, some cool computer science, but I don't trust it as money, nor as a place to be private.
Right on.
Yeah, I'll add to that, John, just real quick. Besides, as our guest here mentioned, the Ethereum Foundation is directly partnered with the people we're trying to counter. There's that element, but also the Ethereum Foundation is partnering with, I want to say Ethiopia. It's a government in Africa to do digital ID, facial recognition on the blockchain through their system. So and of course that could be voluntary, but it seems to, as we heard, be more kind of state-induced, state partnerships.
Yeah, you have projects like WorldCoin and Kleros, which try to use Ethereum as kind of digital justice, where you have a smart contract instead of a jury. And WorldCoin is something that incentivizes people with giving them money to actually scan your eye as this digital ID that you mentioned. So there's like an orb, you put your eye in, you scan it, and you get money for it. So that's a very bad incentive.
Yeah, that sounds like trouble. That's New World Order. New World Order 2.0. I want to make a point on the digital ID blockchain thing, specifically referencing Cardano, which is another programmable blockchain, right? It makes it easy to write software and applications. And so I'm not sure Cardano is as nefarious as Ethereum. But I do want to say something that came to mind that I thought was an interesting perspective that we should all consider, put ourselves in other people's shoes. it was explained to me the digital ID or even having a blockchain ID in some of these developing African countries, you have to understand that a lot of these countries are going through dictatorship after dictatorship after dictatorship. And there's no record of property. A family or a couple generations could work their butts off to finally acquire some wealth or even a home or some property, and the next brutal dictator comes in and wipes it all away. Now, if there was some sort of immutable, which basically means unchangeable, record of property ownership, that could help to overcome that corruption. So I just want to throw that out there. I'm not advocating for digital ID, but we in the US and other areas, I don't want to use the P word, privilege, but we do experience a whole lot of freedom in our lives. One of our speakers before from Russia even used the word democracy, which I revolt from, right? But in Russia, they were a communist dictatorship not very long ago, just a few generations ago, or a few decades ago. So just some things to consider when we're evaluating the stuff that's going on in this world. Just want to throw that out.
Let me add to that real quick, John. One thing, because you're right, as far as discussing Africa and really what's known as the global South, which includes Mexico and Central and South America, where a lot of people are unbanked or have no ID. And to my Mexican friends in the audience and those who are going to hear this later, this is a part of the agenda, is to convince you that you need to join the system. And in fact, I see this a lot being in Texas on the other side of the river for those coming from Mexico, including Miriam's family who came to the US to start a new life, where people see themselves as they're not legitimate until they get their ID or till they get their paperwork. Now I'm a real person, because the whole society around them tells you you're undocumented, you're illegal, you're bad, all this stuff. So they work hard, then they finally get a driver's license and a business license. It teaches people that going into the system is where you'll get success. And what I've been trying to do is encourage both Mexicans and immigrants in the US and Mexicans here to recognize that there's strength in being outside of the systems. And this is what counter economics is all about, is recognizing that we're building a new counter economy. So while it is true that, yes, there are problems with the, keeping up with property, as John mentioned, in other situations where blockchain could be useful, we have to make sure that any of those technologies, which is what John's talking about, stay in the hands of the people. Because clearly we know if a blockchain that claims it's here to help, as they're trying to do, these poor African farmers and Mexican farmers who have no digital ID. Well, digital ID is a human right. That's Sustainable Development Goal number 9. Got to make sure they have a digital ID so they can join the system. And it'll come with a digital wallet and all that fun stuff. So we can clearly see the danger in pushing that as well. If it's in the hands of the WEF or the governments, I don't think we know it's not going to be private. We know it's going to be centralized and it's not going to lead to more liberty. So we need to be able to distinguish between that. Can people like the DarkFi team and others create infrastructure that allows us to keep track of property records and other things without governments? Because if so, that's a step in the direction of the world we're trying to create. But if it's in the hands of the governments and the World Economic Forum and their partners, then it's you'll own nothing and be happy. So we need to understand the difference.
100%.
We gonna do audience questions, Derek? You guys got any in Mexico?
Anybody got okay,
privacy,
yeah, we got
crypto technology. All right,
come on down. We got one question, John, for our panel. Thank you guys for being here with us. Again, we know that some of these, feel free to come up. We got 2 questions here. We know some of these topics can be obscure or a little esoteric for some people, but we're trying to give you a wide range of information. Come on.
Thanks for all the information today, but I got at some point confused a little bit. For a while, I was wondering what channel should I use to communicate with my group, and there's a WhatsApp no, and then there's different option. And today we saw on the screen that probably the best option would be session and single. And then another speaker came after saying that single is financed by US government. And same for, I think was Tor. One says that Tor was the way, and then we hear the opposite. Can you guys agree?
I'll start this off. This is fun though, right? Because in the tech space, you got a lot of difference of opinions. And it is true. Let's just establish the facts besides our opinions. Tor was funded by the US government, branches of the US government. For those who understand Tor, the onion router. Signal also received funding through the US government, certain institutions. And now that's as far as we know. Now, does that mean those whole things are honeypots waiting to catch us? Many of us suspect so, myself and Ramiro and others. Do we have the evidence to 100% prove that? No, but I would recommend a book called Surveillance Valley by a journalist named Yasha Levine, who did an amazing job researching all this. And the fact of the matter is Facebook, nearly every major tool we use, and even the internet itself, was funded through the CIA's venture capital firm, EnQtel. To me, that's reason enough to be suspicious, but obviously we use the internet to broadcast truth, messages of truth, right? So that is a fact. And you mentioned Session. I just want to say something on that and I'll pass it on. I think Session is a great alternative. For those who know Rob Braxman, the privacy guy, he recently did a good video on that. I recommend checking out things like Session and Status. But then Ramiro even recommends XMPP, which is a protocol a little bit more even like in your hands, in your control. It's really about the options you choose. I wouldn't say any of these digital tools should be trusted 100% if you're really doing something illegal that you're worried about somebody, finding. But it is important to practice privacy for the sake of privacy. Some people say, well, I'm not doing anything wrong, Derek. Why would who cares if they're on WhatsApp? Well, if you don't practice privacy, you lose it, right? You can still be just telling your wife what you want her to pick up from the grocery store, but you're using Session or Signal or XMPP, some private tool, right? Because you want to exercise that right. So yeah, and I'm sure we got more opinions on this panel as well. So we'll hear from them.
You got something, David?
Yeah, I think first of all, yes, it is difficult and confusing, and it's equally confusing for us. So there are all these different protocols, and we're, I mentioned earlier that we're kind of drowning in tools, and we have all these different tools that we can use, and they all are, built for different reasons and by different institutions, and a lot of them are funded by government because the government's printing money, literally, so they can fund all this stuff, and they need to use privacy as well. They need to use secure communications as well. The key point that you mentioned, Derek, that I'd like to focus on is open protocols.
Yeah.
So this idea that you have a protocol just means a way of doing things, right? So we have these open ways of doing things that we can all agree on. We look at them, we know exactly how they work. And if we can start using those amongst each other, then that's going to be our best way of doing it, because we don't have to depend on a third-party server. We don't have to depend on a company or an institution that need to be funded to run those, as long as we're running them all ourselves. The problem is, and the confusion enters, is that folks aren't jumping from Facebook Messenger to XMPP and Matrix protocol. It's just not happening. There's this sort of huge in between. Where things like WhatsApp and which was great until Facebook bought it. In my opinion, it was okay. Signal, again, pretty good. We understand the encryption they're using, but we don't know for sure what they're running on their servers. So there's a degree of trust there that is required. But these tools are good intermediaries. They're approachable. They're easy to use, and you don't want to make perfection the enemy of good, right? So if you can get, for example, my whole family is willing to use Signal. Great. They are not willing to use Matrix yet, maybe they will one day, maybe they never will, and maybe that's the way it is, but we're kind of moving this direction, right? So I remember when I first learned about and started using Signal for the first time, it was actually two applications, one for text called Text Secure, I think, and the other was the phone, which was called Red Phone, and it was garbage. It didn't work very well at all. The only person that I could convince to use it with me was my girlfriend, and I kind of forced, there's a little coercion involved, like, come on, just use this thing with me, so we're working our way towards this distributed model where we are in control of the infrastructure entirely. And when it comes to the protocols, the networking protocols like Tor, sometimes it has to do with the way you're using it. If you're using Tor for your general web browsing and you're going to what we call clearnet or .com, .org, .net, your clearnet websites, you're actually exiting the Tor network into the clear, and you have to use a Tor exit node to do that. And a huge percentage of those exit nodes are run by alphabet agencies, and so that traffic is easily correlated and timed and can be used to identify you. But if you're staying within the Tor network and you're visiting Tor hidden services, which are .onions, and they're very long, they're actually public keys. They look like Bitcoin addresses. That's a lot more secure. Now, are there attacks within that network? Yes, it's still not a perfect network. And there's other networks, I2P. And, it's a journey of where we're at, where we're going, what we're willing to compromise on, usability, the UX around these tools, especially the more distributed stuff, is a lot more difficult. And that's what we're working on every day. So don't get overwhelmed. Use what you can get other people to use, and what tool works best for you. and always keep your eye out and be listening and do your own research and understand what the possibilities are for the future.
Right on. Do you want to add something there, Glenn?
Sure. So we know what not to use, right? We know to stay away from Facebook, WhatsApp, all of that stuff. So the question was really good. And then, there's the other end. It's the sliding scale again. The other end is, okay, we can be totally private, but no one else is using that thing. So, okay, this is good. Signal, there's a lot of other people using Signal right now. And if you're using Signal and you want to connect with somebody, okay, well, they're probably using Signal. So it's a good way to move it to. Session is a good one because Session is good for if you don't want to give people your phone number, and if you want to communicate with a stranger or something like that, you can share a barcode or something like that. Session is really good too. So anyway,
I just want to add the best privacy technology that we all have right now. You don't even need a phone to use it, nor do you need to download anything. It's called our mouths. And that's why we emphasize and overemphasize the importance of establishing in real life human connections. Because if you're really subverting the man and doing some nefarious counter economy stuff, the best policy is to do it in person.
Can I?
We got another question. Yeah, go. You got some, Derek?
Yeah, I just want to add to that. We're actually we're almost at Ramiro Romani, so we got maybe time for one more question. But I did want to just emphasize what you said there. And the gentleman who asked the previous question, he also was like, well, why are we all using Telegram? And for those who have looked, one of the, if not, I think the main founder is listed as one of the World Economic Forum contributors. We don't really know exactly what the nature of that relationship is, but people are skeptical of Telegram. But regardless of the specific digital tools, as David and Glenn were saying, and as John was emphasizing there, the whole point is to meet in person. So for example, we have the Mexico Freedom Cell on Telegram. You can search that. There's Texas Freedom Cell. There's so many of them. And then there are Freedom Cells on our website. But whether you're finding people through the website or you're using Telegram to form your groups or Signal or Session or Status or XMPP or any other thing like that, the whole goal is to leave that behind. At least with our movement, Freedom Cells, we're trying to bring people together. So for example, someone was asking about the Morelia Freedom Cell. We have a local Freedom Cell on Telegram, but it's basically just a public group, right? And that's just where we post upcoming events. And then we have an inner circle for the people who actually show up and get involved, right? So it's important, I think, to have those kind of barriers and those protections. So maybe you do have public groups where people who can hear about the work you're doing, they find you through that. But that's not where the real work is happening. The real work is happening face-to-face, in person with people, right? So just remember that too. We don't have to give all of our information to the digital tools. We can use them as intermediaries to finding the people we actually want to work with.
Word. Cool, cool. All right, I got one more question. I'm going to step over here on camera there and unveil your privacy. Go ahead.
All right, thank you guys. I just had a question as far as the privacy goes, and keeping things away and off of the internet is probably the best way. But as far as the hardware and technology, we've learned that a lot of these technologies have come funded from the government, and in general, military and private technology and hardware is generally about 30 to 40 years estimated above what's available privately. So what are your guys' ideas for the future and keeping pace with, these ideas that, the encryption could be hacked by brute force quantum computers somewhere, in classic Donald Rumsfeld sense? What's the sense of the unknown unknowns as far as the battle against privacy?
Let's start with Parasite on that one. I think he's got a lot of experience with that.
I'm very bearish on quantum computing and actually it being something viable. It just costs really a lot of money to do anything valuable, but it's also not improbable that it will happen in the next decade or something like that. But there are also a lot of researchers working on post-quantum cryptography and hybrid cryptography, which part of it is not quantum resistant and part of it is. But I don't think we should move all of our focus into this post-quantum world, because we still have a lot of ways to go until something like that happens. About the government funded things, I don't think it's a bit it's a big deal very often, because even with Signal and Tor, which everyone is scared about because they're being funded by the government, you should try to find somebody you know and somebody you trust that understands the cryptography behind these protocols, and they can actually explain to you that it works well and that it's actually secure. I know it's very difficult for most people to understand these protocols and the way things work, but you should connect with some more experienced people, and they can really explain what's going on behind it, and hopefully in a simple way. I can do that as well. If you message me privately, I'll show you very nicely how Tor and how Signal work.
Right
Thank
on.
you.
All right, you got something to add, David?
No, I was just saying thank you, and yeah, I think he's right. That is important to get some tips from people who are more knowledgeable. A lot of this info, I've seen some heads scratching today. I know a lot of it might go right over some of our heads, myself included. But this is why we bring these guys here who have the knowledge and the experience to try to break these things down to you.
Yeah. Go ahead, David.
Yeah, I was just going to agree that this idea of it's like a cat and mouse game, right? So every time that someone comes up with some super expensive tool and they engineered it specifically to break this specific thing, it's like, okay, that's great, but we've also been building this other thing because we thought you might do that, right? So we're just going to go over there now.
Yeah.
So
yeah, precisely.
this is always happening. There's always this evolution. The one thing that really keeps me, like, I've been really pessimistic for a lot of the past of my life, and even now I have some short-term pessimism, but in the long term I'm very optimistic because of the human ingenuity that goes into any project, any tool, right? So like people are guerrilla gardening, right? They're planting seeds just all over the place. Like, what technology are they going to use? They're going to send robots out to uproot all these? No, it's not feasible. Yeah. And keep in mind that while they're powerful, these guys are in control of these global monetary systems. There's really not that many of them. A lot of their power is an illusion. This is a very Wizard of Oz thing, right? So when we pull the curtain back, it turns out it's just these old guys that say, maybe you should eat some bugs. They're not actually that terrifying, and they require the brilliant minds of humans that generally want to do good, right? So, I guess the overall point is, again, that we're always creating new solutions. And so when they come out and we have a quantum computer now that we haven't told you about for 20 years, and we can break everything as far as standard encryption. Well, first of all, that's all your bank accounts. That's how the internet works. So all that stuff's broken too. Never mind Bitcoin and these new protocols. But furthermore, as mentioned earlier, there's also quantum resistant encryption schemes as well. So all this stuff is constantly being improved and iterated upon.
Yeah.
Do you want to add, Glenn?
No, I think that.
Okay, cool. There was a picture circulating of Klaus Schwab, Justin Trudeau, and the new prime minister in Great Britain. And I just wanted to show it real quick, just to show you guys that we shouldn't really be worried about these clowns. These are the guys everyone's afraid of here. And if you ask me, I think they're just a bunch of dorks. So I guess maybe with that, we could...
Thank you, Parasite. Thank you, everybody, for being with us for this panel. Let's give them a round of applause, everyone.
Thanks, guys.
All right.
All right, we're going to send it over to you there, Mexico.
Thank you. All right, everybody. It's been another beautiful day. You guys having a good time? Enjoying yourself? Y'all learning some? I hope everybody is. We have one more full day tomorrow. We're really excited to present the final day of building conscious and free communities. You're going to hear from people in Mexico, Texas, Ecuador, and elsewhere who are actually living in communities already, who have done the work and who are looking for more people, but also have knowledge to share with you guys about that. That's all going to be tomorrow. I also want to mention for our in-house audience here, we're doing conscious speed dating tonight from 5:30 to 7:30. So if you're out there looking for love, I know some of us got partners, but it's been a kind of a weird time. I'm glad I'm not single during COVID, because it would be a very different time. I thought about that. I have friends who are very much looking for love, and they're like, I found someone beautiful. And then she told me she was vaccinated. And that is the criteria for many of us. I mean, is that a criteria for anybody seeking a partner now? It has become for many people, right? So tonight from 5:30 to 7:30 here at the venue. We're going to do some fun, conscious speed dating networking. It is not a public thing. If you're not here to participate, you cannot just come and watch. You have to be coming, looking to look for love. And yeah, I'm excited. Me and Miriam are going to lead that. So all our single friends come hang out with us. And one other thing I want to mention before we get to our final speaker and our friend who we couldn't do this entire event without. I want to mention one more time the Conscious Agora project that myself, Miriam, Jess, and Ethan, who you've met around here, are working on. If you want to talk to me more about that, I've had plenty of you coming to me trying to talk more about investing in our project or donating to our crowdfunding campaign. I'm a little busy right now, but if you give me a couple days, I'm going to be responding to emails, and I'm happy to talk to whoever. My email is intothelight at protonmail.com. Maybe that was a mistake on the stream. We'll see. If you want to reach out to me and talk about investing or just knowing more about our community, and again, the website is, if you want to donate, is fund, F-U-N-D, Razor, R-A-Z-R, fundraiser.com/conscious agora. And yeah, we'll tell you more about that tomorrow as well. So, final speaker of the night. You guys ready for this? Because I know he's been Ramiro is a perfectionist in all the best ways. So since Greater Reset 1, I've seen him. He's like, I don't have time, man. I'm working on my talk. Finalizing it, trying to make it, because he truly does care about wanting to give you guys good information, not just an overload of tech information, but really coming from the heart. And I think that's important, right? Sometimes tech stuff can maybe feel like far away, or it's just, it's flat. Maybe it's like too different of a feeling that some of you are looking for. But Ramiro really puts heart into it. He puts himself into his work, and I know he's going to do that with his presentation. And I want to tell you a brief story real quick. I know he's just standing there waiting to come out here. He's just like, ugh. The first time I met this guy, so there used to be this festival I threw in Houston. It was called For the Community. We had big parties and activists and speakers. John came and spoke there in Houston, and music and community. It was like this, but on a local level, and it was really beautiful. And one of the times we had this festival, it was like 1 a.m. in the morning. I'm dead exhausted. I'm just ready to go to bed. I think Miriam was ready. We were just so tired. It was the end of the night, and people are still wanting to party. And we're in a parking lot, and one of my friends came up and said, my buddy's going to DJ. And there was this person DJing and had everybody just dancing all night. Like, I was like, I got to go home. And they just were still dancing in this parking lot in the middle of the city of Houston. And that was DJ Ramiro Romani. So he's not talking. He's about to do a DJ set. No, I'm just joking. All right, Ramiro Romani. Everybody give him a warm round of applause. My brother, Ramiro Romani.
Brought my own mic today. Man, I see y'all's brains have actually grown. Man, getting a lot of knowledge downloads today. Yeah, I'm super excited to be here. I almost busted out in a rap session, but something inside told me it wasn't the time. Yeah, so some of you may know me. Does anyone know what I do? Just show of hands. A little bit, yeah. I know my name gets thrown around a lot, and I'm pretty private about what I do, so I just want to share a little bit about myself. And I'm going to give you the good news. Today's talk is not really going to be about technology, so no more abbreviations or any of that jazz. Yeah, so I'm going to talk about the autonomous lifestyle and what that really means, because I'm almost 30. But I'm thanking God that I've had the friends, the support, community like you to support me in living the autonomous lifestyle. So I tried to define this today. Before I get into that, I'll go into who I am. As Derek mentioned before, after I was a DJ, I actually didn't even know who Derek was at the time. I was just some random dude there. But we met 2 years later at a Freedom Cell meeting, and I was like, hey man, I build websites. And he was like, hey, we've got freedomcells.org. And from then, it just became this whole thing. I started helping them with that. And then also we spawned off the Greater Reset Conference. The websites you see, that's my work, the collective work of the team of designers and creatives we work with. I had someone call me a tech guy yesterday, and sometimes I cringe. I'm like, ugh, because I'm not just a tech guy. I'm so much more than that. And I know you are too. You're so multidimensional. And that's what I am. I'm a creative. I like to build things, and I can do tech if I need to. And by God, I'm doing it. And in 2020, we just saw the movement expand with 20,000 people coming on because of COVID to the Freedom Cell Network. And we were able to spin off the conference and do all those things. And along the way, I realized real quickly, I went from a high-paying software engineering job to working for a little bit of Bitcoin Cash. And I was like, okay, I'm free floating here and I need to get it together. And luckily I was able to perceive a problem with my own eyes, which was the people we need to protect most. The freedom fighters of this world were on hostile technology platforms, which all the speakers have talked about today. And I realized, okay, let's dial this back. Let's figure out a solution for all of us. So our company, Above Agency, we launched our project Above Phone, which is our de-Googled phone. I'm sure you guys have heard all about it. Today, I'm not going to be talking about Above Phone, but I'm going to talk about what got me to create it Above Phone and how you can create your mark on the world as well. And I just want to talk about what it took in order to get involved. I didn't, I keep my walls up a lot. So I'm saying, when I got involved with the Freedom Cells, I had no idea I would be smuggling Derek's books over the borders. And like the TSA would be like, how to opt out of the technocratic state, like a bunch of copies in my suitcase. And be like, no, just play it off. It's good. It's good. I had no idea I would be the day before the Greater Reset 2. I didn't know the Greater Reset site was going to get attacked by Chinese hackers. And I was like sweating the night before the stream, trying to figure it out. Like, oh God. They're trying to like rewrite our links to point to Chinese projects. And so I fixed that the day before the stream. Freedom Cells has just been attacked by anyone and everyone since we started. And it's like, come on guys, I'm just one guy. Get your act together. You can try harder. But they've tried to DDoS us. They took us down for a few days. And again, it was really putting myself out there, working all night to get a site back up, find some solution. And you know what? That was sacrifice, but it was so worth it. Let's turn off this podium mic for the echo. So along the way, it's been a lot of successes, and that's only because I'm willing to sacrifice, because this is my tribe. I finally found where I fit in. Acceptance. Thank you. But it wasn't always like this for me, and I just want to share a little bit and be vulnerable. I actually come from an Eastern culture, right? Eastern parents, they want their sons and daughters to be doctors and lawyers. And I was never very good with school. Maybe I just didn't like when people told me what to do. And I was given very high aspirations. Oh, this kid's gonna go to Ivy League. He's gonna be great. And it just never worked out for some way. I have this one story where I was a chubby middle schooler and I was in a gifted science magnet program. And I remember it was a day to turn in your science projects. And I show up, everyone had their science projects. Oh, I completely forgot it. And our teacher at the time, she was like, yeah, you're kicked out of the program. And I remember bawling my eyes out on the way back to the classroom, just alone. And there was cases like this. For whatever it meant, I never fit in with traditional academics. But I think there was a reason for that. Maybe I would be working for a crazy big tech firm, or maybe I would be hurting people when I'm providing them treatment as a doctor. So I think the universe follows you and gives you the right path. And so the right path is here with you today. So going outside the established system, you never know the things you could accomplish. When I was a software engineer, there's this website called Hacker News. That's like the front page of the tech internet. Anyone who's a software engineer, they post their articles up there. I never thought I would get onto Hacker News. I was only able to after I quit my software engineering job and put my passion behind XMPP. We got on the 3rd spot of Hacker News. So I was really happy to see that. Mom, I'm sorry. If you're watching this, I didn't become a doctor, but I spoke alongside doctors at the World Council of Health, talking about EMF and blue lights and the dangers to our eyes and to our health, and they respected my opinion. So I cherish that. It just shows your background doesn't matter. You don't have to go to school for this. All that matters is your passion, what the work you're willing to put in, what you're willing to learn. If you're willing to show up, you're willing to put the time. And when you have no fear of who might judge you, that is when you're living the autonomous lifestyle. Okay, I gotta go back. Okay, so I have a definition for the autonomous lifestyle. By the way, this whole talk is modeled off of Derek Bro's autonomous development goals, coined in the latest version of his book. I thought his talk was going to be about the ADGs, but it got squeezed in the last 5 minutes. So don't worry, I'm gonna go over the ADGs a little bit. And what I'm going to be talking about today is how can we reach this autonomous lifestyle. Okay, so autonomous lifestyle, loving life on your own terms, living life, loving life. So what is the autonomous lifestyle? How can I get here? What tools should I use? We'll talk a little bit about the tech tools, but we'll also talk about other tools. Honestly, I have my own opinions and ideas about this. Derek, John, and we all have our different opinions on how we can build counter-economic structures. Some people might get triggered by what I share today. Hell, Derek might get triggered. But all I'm going to share is what I felt has worked for me and how I can make my mark on the world. And how can you maintain and grow this mark on the world? You're going to have your brand. How can you grow it? And how can we all work collectively autonomously? So the autonomous lifestyle, the definition I have is when you own the ability to provide for yourself and others and have the freedom to choose fulfilling work. Okay, it's pretty simple. And I have like a triple Venn diagram here. On one area is autonomous. That would be like owning your own company. On the top part is fulfillment. That is doing work that you love. And on the bottom side is abundance, right? So getting paid to do what you love on your own terms, and then boop, that's the center of the Venn diagram. This is the autonomous lifestyle. Okay, just visualize that. And there's some caveats to this autonomous lifestyle. Like, what do we mean? Let's try and define that. Well, it means that your source of income, how you provide for yourself, can't be cut off by a single person or an organization. And typically this means you have multiple income streams, or maybe you have multiple customers, right? It doesn't mean you are an employee for a organization or a company, because, you know, in the United States anyways, most of that is at-will employment. They can fire you at any time, you can quit at any time. They can give you crazy medical mandates. The autonomous lifestyle is going to require high collaboration with others, high amounts of collaborations, transferring value through your specialization or different forms of capital. So social, financial, physical. For instance, if you meet Derek Bros or John Bush, these guys are both master connectors, master social connectors. They can plug you into who you need to, right? That's a form of capital, and it's beautiful. And lastly, the person who's living the autonomous lifestyle needs to enjoy or have enough passion for what you do to be innovate and be the obvious choice when you compare yourself to the establishment. Counter-economics is short for counter-establishment economics. You want to point to what the government or corporations or just some subsidized gargantuan system is doing and say, hey, I can do this better. So that means being creative and working your butt off. And now I'm going to talk about the autonomous development goals. So Derek has a list of autonomous development goals listed in the back of his book. And basically, I was reading them and I was thinking about, wow, this is really cool, because essentially this is creating a brand new set of industries or economies based around these. If you want to support these development goals, there will be natural companies or individuals that need to step up and provide these services that aren't going along with coercion, right? So 10 goals, I will start reading them off. So goals number 1 and 2 are related to education, free access to education, homeschooling, being present with our kids and not sending them off. So these will be homeschooling pods, apprenticeships, online courses, tutoring, knowledge libraries. Some great speakers this week. David Rodriguez has spoken about this. We've also have Lainey Liberty here from Project World School Summit. These are new, innovative things that we can do to, 1, have someone help us out with our kids, and 2, to give them the skills they need from a very young age. And what I'm thinking is that, like I said, you're going to have multiple jobs in this new autonomous landscape. So I can totally see a farmer or a permaculturist also taking a day out of his week to mentor the collective homeschooling pod's kids, right? Maybe that passes off. One parent or specialist takes over and all the kids go from house to house. That could be a really cool way to do it. So that's 1 and 2. 3 and 4 are food systems. These are collective production gardens. We're going to have to get more creative with how we decide to exchange and contract with people. One thing I notice is that we're on this quest for land. Well, don't we already know our friends have a bunch of land? You know, we do have friends with land. So why is this exchange not taking place? You know, I think we're very focused on having something for ourselves and not seeing the abundance that's in front of us already. Another really good idea is farming directories, which a lot of people have talked about, food co-ops, and also the ability for one person in your community to make relationships with the local farmers and then pick up your organic food for you and give you a nice display of food every week. So they go out and make the rounds, they pick up the orders, they bring it to a pickup point in your neighborhood. This is something I've talked about previously in TGR3, how to organize something like this on a simple spreadsheet. You can check that out on our replays. I also think permaculture consulting is going to be huge. You know, this is why we should all be working hard to develop our own gardens so that if we choose to, we can do the same things for our neighbors and for our communities. Seed banks. Man, anyone see the crazy fruit here in Mexico? Oh, man. If that found its way to the States, I don't know what I'd do. I'd be having a lot of peanut butter and jellies, man. Regenerative farming. We've had a bunch of great speakers speak on that, including Sean Hawkins. There's also the organic nutrition or inputs, right? There's something called the Mittleiter method in gardening, which Texas Ready Seeds over there in Texas has spoken about. And I've been lucky enough to go to their farm and see how they do it. And they make a pretty good case for adding trace elements. There's 13 basic minerals that plants need. And sometimes when the soil hasn't been regenerated and is lacking, and you do need to put in the years of time to put plants that'll restore the soil, you do need to add nutrition over the top. So it only makes sense, hey, let's secure our sources of NPK, nitrogen, phosphorus, and potassium. Thank you. And also the organic trace elements. As Sean has showed in his talk, he also showed me how to make the Jadam mixture. This is important, guys. This is like a whole supply chain, right? It doesn't, food can't just randomly pop out of the ground. You also need the components to restore your soil. So these are all different economies that are going to pop up around food systems. 5, privacy and security. You don't need to worry about that because I got that. I'm just joking. So sovereign communications, hack-resistant devices, technological infrastructure, self-defense, collective defense groups. You know, that'd be cool. Asking your freedom cell, yo, if anyone messes with me, I'm gonna call you, just show up over there looking muscular. And yeah, we've got each other's backs. And having these protected devices are gonna be so important. I'll talk a little bit more about that later in my talk, is how we can maintain this free exchange between it. So number 6 is economics, currency, and law. So, you know, there's these, because remote parts of India didn't have access to banks previously, they would do this thing called community crowdfunding, and where all the families in a neighborhood would put in their money together once a month, and then they would invest it in something important, like a car for one of the kids in their community, or tuition for someone's college. And this is what we need to start doing, and I kind of see it as the eventual replacement for taxes, as we decide who we want to work with, and we put our money or whatever currency that we decide to use towards projects that we care about. Now, there's another really interesting way to transfer money overseas, and I wish our previous speaker, Fluffy Pony, this is originally what he said he was going to talk about, but he mentioned Hawala networks, and I got really excited and I looked into this. Hawala networks. This is typically used in the Middle East and other African countries to transfer money, large sums of money, like overseas without banks, without needing any form of know your customer or any of that. And it works on a familial trust and reputation system. There are families of hawalers. They're usually called hawala wala. That's a fun word, hawala walas. And essentially, it's this family that has money, and a person can come there and say, hey, I want to send money to my friend in Libya. So the hawala wala will take the money from them, deposit it in their local org, and then he'll contact another hawala wala in Libya and ask them, hey, this money needs to be available. And so if you have enough hawala walas in all parts of the world, there is money coming in and coming out of all of these places, and these anyone who carries these out, they're trusted to secure that money, and their honesty is on the line. If they aren't able to pay out, that's going to look really bad on that particular family, and they're going to be cut out of the system. So this is traditionally how money is sent around in Middle Eastern countries, and I think we need to bring this back to America and Western countries. It's pretty cool. And local peer-to-peer exchanges, I'll talk a little bit more about that. Legal structures, protections. I'll talk a little bit more about this too. Now, I will say I don't think that any legal structure is going to be our saving grace, but at this point, my mind is so open, I'm willing to try and see what protection we can get. So yeah, I'll get into this more. So there's private contracts and agreements and arbitration. That's also a really important aspect of this. We need people versed in not legal language per se, but we need to be able to write proper contracts between us as we get into some of these more innovative agreements between us, whether we're moving out onto someone's land and we're working the land for them, and then we're growing things and they're getting a portion of the proceeds. All of that stuff needs to be fleshed out. So economics, currency, and law will be a big part of it. ADG number 8, land and resource stewardship. This is all about securing access to the land. So this could be land shares. I think this is something we're all going to need to adapt to, because right now there's maybe a few people with a lot of land and a lot of people with not so much land. We're going to need to share, right? No way around it. Rainwater catchment and filtration will be in here. Power generation. A really cool conference that you should stay in touch about is the Tesla Tech Conference in Albuquerque, New Mexico. Happens every year. Will happen in August this year. I met some really amazing people there, scientists, researchers, and engineers who are working on free energy, magnetic motors, and the tech that Tesla was working on before he left us. There's also bioconstruction, which I know several people here are working on. Haven Earth back in Texas has been working on their hemp homes. I was lucky enough to join them in Texas to build a 120-foot square hemp home. And wow, there's no better feeling than building your own house and being like, all right, we can do that with 30 or 40 people. So number 9 is health. So yeah, I mean, there's so much that can be said about health. We're moving past allopathic medicine and we're moving past hospitals. Man, I just feel sicker when I'm in a hospital. Don't you? Yeah, it's weird energy. And we're going to move into things like preventative nutrition. There's going to be experts in this field who come out and guide us. There's going to be homeopathy. There's going to be emotional therapy, letting yourself be vulnerable and expressing those emotions. We do need trusted counselors and guides for this. Movement therapy. Massage therapy, nothing like a great massage. Energy work, plant medicine, acupuncture, all of these things, we need to incorporate these into our lives and to our culture so that we can heal the people we care about. Number 10 is last is about reclamation, because they're attacking us from every which way and direction. And I actually never wanted to call attention to this, but did anyone find it interesting how I've never seen anything like this in the months I've been in Morelia, but I noticed chemtrails the Monday of the event. And it just makes me think, wow, there's so little going on that these guys do that they have to come literally try and rain on our parade, right? They are so scared of us, and that's a good feeling. So reclamation will be about dealing with things like chemtrails, EMF mitigation. We might start working with larger organite structures like cloud busters to clean out the atmosphere. Yeah, some love for Organite. Grid work, which I've been being introduced to this year, setting the energy of large spaces and our land. Quantum energy, even praying for people from a distance. Those are all things that we're going to need to do. Awesome. So I just want to go back. I know I mentioned a lot of things, but who thinks they could find their career in one of these autonomous development goals? Could I get a show of hands? All right. Yes, I'm seeing a lot of hands. It's a good feeling intuitively in your gut and your heart. It makes sense. These are the things that we need to move towards. And the cool part is this isn't even scratching the surface. I didn't even mention transportation and logistics. Now, how am I going to send a package back up to the States? I don't know. How are we going to send fresh food? These are all things that need to be figured out. And unfortunately, a lot of these things I mentioned are illegal. But we're going to figure it out. Okay? Yeah. Yeah. All right. So how can we get here? And I'll kind of just explain my process from, I had experience before I got into this, but just explain my process from starting with nothing and moving towards having an autonomous lifestyle, having a creative organization behind you that can help support you. The first thing is just to become learned. Put all your time and energy into studying the things that you love. And you're going to get to a point where you know a lot and you can talk about it and people are going to love hearing about it from you. And you need to keep going at that point. Then you need to become practiced. Either for yourself, first take it, for me, it was getting my house onto sovereign technology. It was running all the technologies of my company, completely self-hosting them, getting the practice with that. For you, it might be creating a badass garden or building an amazing structure in your backyard. Show results, achieve results. Once you've done it for one person, you can do it for many people, right? And once you've achieved results, you can start to brag about it. And people will be like, oh, hey, I think I want that for my house. Or, hey, I would like you to do some acupuncture for me because the last person you did is arthritis got healed, right? That's the flow of it. Empower others. So bring other people into your project, make them more complex. Instead of just doing permaculture consulting, you might work with the person who is sourcing NPK and these trace minerals and even has a seed bank, and all collaborate together on doing these permaculture consulting projects in the gardens and splitting the profits from each one, right? So it's bringing it up. We're making our own economies of scale. We're making counter economies of scale. And the last way is you are eventually going to get to a point where you need to transfer financial energy. You're going to need a way to receive money. And that's what we're going to talk about. But before we get into that, I want to talk about this thing called, I've dubbed the counter economic spectrum. And I have this really funny chart. I wish I could show you right now. It goes from, so establishment is on the right and purist is on the left. Klaus Schwab has two double chins and he's on the right. He's like looking like this. And then on the left, on the purist side, a little bit next to the edge, it's Derek Bros. Because he's unbanked, he's unvaxxed, and he's unfazed. That's a documentary title I have. Yeah. And then a little farther over here, it's little Ramiro, and John is too something in this area. I don't want to appropriate him on the scale yet. Basically, a pure counter-economist will not use any banks whatsoever. They won't use any financial system. That means they won't even use PayPal. They won't use digital fundraisers. Maybe they'll use crypto. There's more debate around that. And of course, as Derek has alluded to, it's harder to make larger transactions when you're a purist. And there's more work involved in bartering and trading for what you need. It's more work, and you are usually working outside of money, which I think when you're in our community, it's the coolest thing to see when people have gold and silver coins, honey products, everything. Everyone is willing to barter out there, right? So I love seeing that we are moving towards a pure counter-economic system. But the fact of the matter is, right now, we don't have Hawala networks. How are we going to transfer money to our kids or parents overseas? How are we going to keep ourselves afloat as we do need to shop from stores from time to time? So then if you go back towards the right side of the spectrum, you see that there's companies. Past that, there's credit unions, right, which are a little bit better than banks. And then there's banks. Gross. We won't even talk about those. Fuck those guys. So in this area with companies, credit unions, they're convenient. There's obvious risk in holding your assets in someone else's possessions. You know, they always say FDIC assured, but I don't believe that. When there's a bank run, it's been like, and it's gone. Yeah. There's little privacy. You have to provide your ID. And your fees contribute towards financial control, right? But it's easy to get paid. It's universal. So my goal here is not to tell you to do one thing or the other. It's just to outweigh the options. And I personally believe that good can come of using companies. And I'm going to dig into that a little bit. So the role of companies in the counter economy. Now, is working with a bank account, is working with a company, is that going against our mission? Well, let's talk and discuss and debate about that. Well, one, they do separate liability from your person. So now anything your company does can't be held accountable to anything you have going on. You know, there's a legal defense there. Sometimes people would say that, hey, that's not actually going to protect you, but that remains to be seen. You can also separate taxes from your person, right? Not even getting into paying taxes yet, but separating that from your person. I think that is important. And I want to say this, businesses don't have to make money. And if you don't make money, you don't have to pay taxes, right? And what you can spend on is expenses like wages to your friends, your team, real assets like seeds, plants, trees, cars, land, payment of contractors, and losses. Yeah, I don't know where those fruit trees went, man. I think someone ate them all. So my point is here, if you see what I'm getting at, is there are ways to work inside the legal system while still creating a better world. And sometimes we have to do that when there aren't any alternatives, although I think we're all racing towards building alternatives. And so my recommendation is this. This is what I did. Again, I'm not claiming I'm the perfect counter-economist. This is just what has worked for me so far. You can form your own limited liability company around your idea, around your business of an agarist development goal or an autonomous development goal. You can do this in a few hours. You can do this in a few hours. It's just a little bit of paperwork. You only need a few documents that can be prepared by something called a registered agent. And there are two really good states to do this in. Wyoming, which if you get a Wyoming LLC, that's actually anonymous because they don't send your name off to the Secretary of State, which is really cool. That's what above LLC is. There's also Delaware, which doesn't have the anonymity, but there's other tax benefits. And yeah, it's just really easy to get started there. So this registered agent can do 99% of the work for you. They'll generate your documents and you'll have a mailing address, so all your mail will be sent there. That's pretty much all you need to start a bank account in the name of a company. Now, keep in mind, if you want a bank account, you're submitting your ID to the IRS, you're in that system. But we're going to talk about how you can minimize your risk in that process. So is that incompatible with counter economics? Not necessarily, and that's my opinion. Khan can believe that as we move further into the stages of agorism, we're actually going to break down these large corporations, and they're going to fall apart into independent contractors, right? And we've already seen this shift. We've already seen this shift throughout COVID, because if you have been going to credit unions or small business places, you see there was a massive uptake in people starting small businesses. I think that's the spirit of the counter-economist speaking. People taking matters into their own hands as they watch the world crumble around them. So US Census records found that we hit 2 consecutive record years of people starting their own small businesses. In 2020 at 4.4 million, and then again we hit another record next year at 5 million in 2021. What does that mean to you? Well, it means that we are finding ways to exchange outside of their systems. That's what it means to me. And working inside these legal structures, they're not the end, okay? This is just a baby step towards freedom. There's many businesses and nonprofits, people that we've had on the Greater Reset. I can mention the World Council for Health. I can mention Dell Big Trees, ICANN. These are nonprofits. They're working with banks. They're taking money. Are they still doing good in this world? Yes. So that's my point here, is that you can use these legal structures, minimize your risk, and still do what you're called to do. And in the end, you get to decide how you spend the profits or you spend your money, and you account for yourself report whatever you want. This isn't about reporting taxes. This is about exchange. So minimizing your risk here. So you can minimize your amount of money in the bank, okay? Your business makes money. Cool, let's be a counter economist about it and put it in a gigantic safe. Or you can just make a bet out of it too. That'll be comfortable. And you can keep it on hand as assets. You can buy cars with it, you know, do whatever you can. Pull it out of the bank when you don't need it there. Manage your expenses, and you know, it's up to you how you want to account and report for your taxes, or even if you want to do that. Maximize your privacy. Don't use third-party tools to manage your books. Have your own receipts. Try and do everything by paper. And here's a cool thing: foreign contractors don't have to file tax forms. You know, that's a cool little tidbit. So now I've talked a little bit about the dirty something in the spectrum, moving towards establishment, somewhere in the middle there. Now let's talk about counter-economic purists, because you know I gotta do y'all right. This is for people who want no foot in the system whatsoever. What are they gonna do, right? Maybe they're gonna be using cryptocurrency for large remote transactions. Maybe they want to they have $30,000 in cash and they want to buy crypto, or vice versa. How can they do that? Well, of course, I recommend the two cryptocurrencies, Bitcoin and Monero, which we've talked about both. And I'll share with you places to get them, or to speak with other people who are like-minded about them. These are both Telegram groups, so you can find them in Telegram. You can write them down. One is Agorist Market, AGORIST Market. This is hosted by our friend and past TGR speaker, Mike Swatek, who's doing a bunch of amazing things now. But that is that's a peer-to-peer trade and exchange group, and you can also buy Bitcoin there or sell Monero there. Of course, you can always do this in person too. The other one I found that's more recently making the waves is from it's the Bitcoin peer-to-peer market. That's literally the name on Telegram, BTC P2P market. And there's more people coming about exchanging different services on there. The other is how do you pay people? Well, you've got cash, gold, silver, and barter for in person. And then if you're wanting to make a website and you don't want any bank involvement, you can use this technology stack. This is all open source software that you can host yourself. So that's usually WordPress with WooCommerce and Bitcoin Pay Server. Bitcoin Pay Server is software you can run. It's a full Bitcoin or Litecoin node and allows you to automatically create invoices and accept crypto for whatever products you have on the site. It's what we use at abovephone.com. That's how we can accept Bitcoin, Litecoin, and Monero. And we've been happily doing this since the first day we started. How do you get into crypto? Well, there's on-ramps, right? You can find someone really cool in person, or you can use a website like localmoneros.com, localmoneros.co. And it's there you can use pretty much any money exchanging service to buy large amounts of Monero or to buy other coins as well. And off-ramps, you can do the opposite. You can use local Moneros to sell your crypto, or you can go directly into precious metals by using sites like veltgold.com, VELDT gold.com. Thanks to my friend Kenny for showing me that site. And also sdbullion.com. And there's no ID needed. You literally pick out whatever gold or silver you want. You send them your crypto and they ship it straight to your door. Okay. So to me, it blows my mind how we can do this today. There are on and off ramps. They're just not direct. They're a little bit roundabout. All right. Cool. How much time do I got? Anyone know? 8 more minutes. Cool. 5 minutes. Perfecto. All right. So I'm actually going to get to the technology part of my talk. And then maybe if we have time for some questions, we'll take some questions. So I've been given just a big opportunity to really take our company above agency to the next level. And we've gotten a round of seed funding that we're going to use to create a suite of universal internet utilities. Now, there's been a lot of talk of protocols, right? It's protocols over proprietary software. Like, what do I mean by that? Well, I mean that when you're using Proton Mail or something, you have to use their app. You have to use their website. That's wrong, because it just means that Proton Mail can exit out of that equation and you're left with nothing. So the goal is to use protocols, not software that only one person controls. So we are creating a suite of universal internet utilities. Right now we have email, we have VPN, including the WireGuard protocol that was mentioned. We have video conferencing from Jitsi. We have our very own search engine, SearchX, which other speakers have mentioned. And then we also have the gemstone, the best software for communication that I know of, called XMPP, which doesn't get enough love. I guess it's just not sexy enough. I'm going to come up with a better name for it. That'll be one of our missions this year, is making this come out to the limelight. Because choose whatever messenger you want. You're not going to find one that you can run yourself, besides maybe Matrix, but Matrix is a lot newer. XMPP is 2 decades old. Google has used it before to power their Hangouts, Google Hangouts. WhatsApp used it to power their old version of the app. What does that mean? Well, it scales to millions upon millions of people. That's no joke. And it's also got end-to-end encrypted messaging built in, inspired by the Signal protocol. But again, software that you can run and validate yourself. When you're working with Signal Messenger or anything like that, you have no idea what they're doing. And yeah, I mean, I'll just mention this. They've been collecting phone numbers and contacts since for a very long time. I don't know if that's still forced to be the case, but there's some red flags there. So my point is that we are going to promote these universal internet utilities, and they're going to be the mainstay over Above Suite. So when I get back to Texas, that's exactly what I'm going to be working on. We're going to be working on a new backend infrastructure where you can pick out these services a la carte. So you could be like, all right, I only want email and XMPP. I don't want any of the other jazz. And then we are going to, Glenn said earlier today, the Above phone is not at iPhone yet. Bullshit. We're going to get it to iPhone. It's going to be better than iPhone, okay? Yes. They're making our jobs easier for us. I have a lot of friends who work in big tech, big companies, and they're laying their best engineers off because they're seeing the economies crumble. And I'm going to be there to be like, hey, brother, it's okay. Let's free the world. So I'm trying to co-create with these peeps. We're going to open their minds. We're going to get to them. We're going to get to them, and we're going to get them on the right side. And so there's these special ideas we have for voice to text. We're going to create a voice to text keyboard where you can just talk in your phone, and I'll write it on the page, and it's not going to connect to the internet. So no one's going to know what you said. You can say all your dirty whispers to, whoever you're talking to. It's all good. And we're also working on anonymous SIM cards. So this is an offering that we're going to have probably within the next month, thanks to our friends at JMP Chat, which bridge the XMPP network to the phone network. And so we've partnered with them to bring you data-only SIM cards. So now there's no other information you have to provide in order to get service for your phone in the United States or Canada. More countries soon, fingers crossed. We are going to get you cloud storage. I know we had a long talk about how we should be moving towards self-hosting and complete decentralization. I believe in that. I truly do. But I'm going to give you a badass product first so you can see what we can aspire towards. And so, yeah, when we get back, we're going to be investing in our data center, adding lots more storage so we can give everyone 25 gigabytes of storage to store all your photos. We're going to make sure whatever solution we work with is end-to-end encrypted, works across your phone, your laptop, even a website, right? Because that's what this is all about. Universal internet utilities. There should be nothing between you and your value and your freedom and your creativity. Thank you. Thank you. There's also the Above books coming soon. These are going to be, we're going to upcycle these old flagship Lenovo laptops that have been the fleet of laptops for schools, for big companies. And we're going to upgrade every component we can. We're going to make the most free and friendly software choices in these machines as we can possible. And we're going to get them to you so they have all the software you need installed out of the box. All you need to do is just, open up the programs. We're going to have the same thing we do with Above phones, all the webinars, all the guides. We're going to give you guys the best software and show you how to use it. So now there's not going to be any spying on your computer. Apple is not going to be sending your photos on your home computer, as they were found out only on January 15th last week that they do. They send your personal pictures back to them. I'm so done with that. I'm so done with paying $1,000 for a computer and not owning it. So Above Book coming soon. The last thing I'm going to say is I'm a software engineer, but most of the software you use is built by other people. And I appreciate that. I respect that so much. We have to contribute to open source software. I recently finished up an interview with the developers of the Aurora store, which originally was one guy from India, and he absolutely crushed it. He made an app that allows you to download apps from the Google Play Store anonymously through random Gmail accounts. And this guy, I looked at how much he was getting per month for this from his crowdfunding, and it was like something really low. It was like $20 a month. So one of my pledges this year is going to be taking 5% of our profits and putting it back into open source software. So if you're out there and you're making a difference in the world with your free app or your free program on Linux, get in touch with us. Feel free to share me software. You can get in touch with me at takebackourtech.org. If you could all do me a favor right now, let's just collectively, let's go to that website and sign up for my mailing list, and you're going to know directly from me when we have all these new products roll out. I'm going to share some awesome ideas with you. All the content I've ever done for Take Back Our Tech has always been free. I don't believe in charging for knowledge, because you can all of you can do this yourself. So support me, and please joining the email list, and also check out Above Phone if you get the chance. And yeah, I am just so blessed in this opportunity, and I'm going to do everything in my power to help us move towards a free society. Our connection is sacred. Thank you so much.
Yeah, make some noise for Ramiro.
All right.
Ramiro! Come on. Yeah, it's been a beautiful day. Day 4, you guys enjoying learning how to take back our tech?
Yeah.
Yeah. How y'all doing in Texas, John?
We're good. Great talk, Ramiro. I appreciate the passion. It sounds like you've been really busy, so we're all very much looking forward to the expansion of your company, and may you reach new heights. And I'm pumped about this autonomous development goal concept. I think it could really provide some unity and some direction for a movement that's very scattered. I'm really excited to see what we come up with between now and 2030.
Yeah, it's time to create the world we want, and that includes taking back tech from big tech and big brother. Guys, we appreciate you so much. We'll be back tomorrow for day 5, building free and conscious communities. Much love. See you tomorrow.
10 a.m.
Peace. Exit.
Okay, I got some announcements. About 40 minutes worth. I'm just kidding. Will you hand me that phone there, please, sir? Thank you, sir. Oh, hey, whoa, so, okay, so guess what we get to do tonight? Go to bed early, get a good night's sleep. We have a very long day tomorrow. I don't want anybody staying up late.